this is before I woke up. My best friend, he goes to the bathroom, and as he's going back, he hears banging on the door, and he looks out the window and sees see the law enforcement. So he goes out because he didn't want his sons to wake up. So they're holding ARs ready to go. And so he said he opened the door, put his hands out. They pushed the door open, grabbed him, slammed him against the wall. Ooh. Right there. That window that he looked at, that's where their bed is. So his sons now are looking at their dad with guns pointed to the back of his head being cuffed.
What did they say his dad did wrong?
Well, they were just doing a raid.
What was the accusation?
They were just doing a raid, so they need to clear the house. So everyone, and when they do that, everyone gets cuffed and taken out of the house.
What do you mean hold? You've never told me to do that before.
That's a new thing.
I always wait till you finish, and I can tell you're getting going.
Oh, that's all right.
And also, we're rolling, and I want that. So.
All right. All right,
there you go.
Little prayer.
Yeah, let's do it.
Glory to Jesus Christ. We give you thanks and praise for the good work that you have begun and will complete in our lives. We ask you to bless this conversation and help all those who watch this, despite our shortcomings, be led into a deeper, more beautiful relationship with you.
Yes,
Amen.
Amen. That's great.
Siaka, what a bloody pleasure.
Oh, thank you, my friend. Can
This
I
is
give
great.
you? Yeah, let's do a
Yes.
handshake. You know, it's funny.
That was a good handshake, too.
Thank you.
Felt
Thank you.
good.
Right
Sometimes
there.
it doesn't feel good.
No, you get in. You
gotta-
got to be firm, but yet like gives room.
Firm, but not so firm.
No,
that
you're not trying to
like,
break the hand. I'm not trying to test your manhood in a handshake. I don't really understand that when somebody comes in and they're like, "I can break your hand." I'm like, "Why would you? We just met."
Yeah, like what Trump did to Putin.
Yeah, well, that's different. That's different.
different.
That's like, we're just meeting for friends. That's like trying geopolitical hierarchy. You can let them know we have bigger guns than you do. That's what that's about. So I'm okay with that. No, this is great, man. I'm so happy. Like I said in the elevator, my wife and I randomly fell into your show. And full disclosure, especially at the time, and we were reading together. We read the New Testament together, as part of like our relationship. And as we were reading, and we go into this church, Godspeak Church in Thousand Oaks. Rob McCoy. I don't know if you know Rob McCoy. Oh, you'd love Rob. Yeah. I should get him on the show. He's amazing. And so we had our thoughts about Catholics, right? And next, we're sitting there watching the show, and one of the things that really got me about the show is two things. One, how direct you can be, yet kind in that directness. Like when someone's wrong, you don't shy away from them being wrong, but at the same time, it was just very different. Like,
what was the? Do you think? Because I don't usually get confrontational at all.
It wasn't. One, I can tell you right now. Like, so I don't remember back then. But I can tell you just recently, you had Clavin on.
Yeah.
Right. And you guys are talking about, his situation and his son and all that. And you were, while you weren't pressing him to make a decision, you were pressing on what the faith says, what the Bible says about that decision and where you are. And I could personally, for me, and I know them and they're great people and a lot of love. And I could see him struggling between what the book says and what the faith is about and his heart for his personal heart for his son. So that was very interesting, where yet you can have easily gone, "Oh, I'm not going to touch it anymore." But you just, and it was very gracious. It was very sweet. And I was like,
first of all, I appreciate that. First of all, Clavin was just delightful.
Oh yeah, he's amazing. He's
so
funny.
Kind.
He's funny
that's
too.
actually one of the things Josiah says. Like Josiah, the producer, has a different experience to other people, right? Because people come in, they're here to see me, to be on the show, and it's interesting. I don't want to speak for Josiah, but I'll just say that there are some people who barely look at him or acknowledge him. Right?
Yeah. The big timers, the big timers. Was I not supposed to look at him earlier? Oh, dang it, man. I was trying to show that I was actually big time. My fault. Josiah, forget that I looked at you, brother. And don't look at me when we're leaving.
But
there you go.
but Clavin,
that's awesome.
Yeah, like Josiah would disagree with Clavin way more than I do, and he'd be a lot more kind of angsty about it, I would say. But he himself was like, he was just so kind. He was such a beautiful man. And I actually told him before he came on the show, I need to press you on this, and I need to, because I don't want to catch people off guard. Okay. It's not about getting people. Okay. I don't want people to feel uncomfortable. Right. And I also want him to be like, to think about it so he can give a response.
As opposed to a defense. Yeah. Because a lot of times we defend our thing, and then if you can give him a chance to have a conversation about it, now you can. Sometimes, like when you're defending, you just got so used to defending, you forget to really take it aside and like really look at it for yourself. Not saying he has or hasn't. it's a good practice, I think, to go, hey, just think about this, and then we can talk about it. So
I did that with Prager as well. I said I need to press you on the. I don't know if you ever watched my
interview
with Prager.
That was the one. Oh, because I remember. Okay, wow, you just woke me back up.
That was less fun.
Well, yes, because you were going pretty hard at him on that one, and he was, and I've heard Dennis say this before. It's about actions, not thoughts, which is not what the Sermon on the Mount was all about, right? So, I mean, you look at what is it, Matthew 5, where he starts off, and you're just like, well, I can't really get away from I thought about it. It was just a thought. Well, Jesus said, cut out your own eye. Because that's how bad it gets, right? I mean, to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, or what's your take on this? It's like, this is also an example of why we need him, and no one is good, no matter how much you follow the law, which he was talking to Jews. He wasn't sitting there talking to, Gentiles who were out there worshiping different pagan gods, right? So in that, it was so controversial because, and I've seen this with a lot of my Jewish friends, the law is really important, and it should be, but yet the law then becomes the justification. Which is, to me, that's what Jesus was getting out there and going, nah, that was just keep you guys like hopefully on the right track, but none is good, right? And that when Dennis was doing that, and he's been pressed on it before when talk about pornography, and he has said the same thing over, and God bless him, a very intelligent man. And we had a conversation in the car, and I would love if we could say a prayer for him. I know he just got injured recently. He fell and hurt his back, and it's been going around a lot. But I would ask your audience and those that
lead us in a short prayer.
Really quick. Father God, we thank you for bringing us together today and a chance for us to share each other, share my story with Matt, and be able to share with the audience. But more importantly, Lord, we just ask for your continued healing hands on Dennis Prager, and that you help him and his family get through this tough time. And whatever you decide for him, whether he's fully back to normal or has any type of anything left over because of this accident, that Jesus, you show yourself to him. Because more importantly, he's such a sweet man, and I think that he is on the cusp of knowing you, and maybe it took this, but Lord, show yourself to Dennis and his family, and continue to wrap your arms and your hands around them. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Yeah.
Thank you. I really enjoyed my talk with him.
Yeah, he was
so lovely.
Great.
I really thought he was delightful.
Funny as all get out.
Yeah. He's a bigger than life kind of guy.
I know. That's what makes
I got to tell people how we met.
Yeah.
So we were at the Am I Racist premiere.
No, you're not. Oh, the movie, yes.
Okay, good.
Sorry. I thought it was a question.
You're just used to people asking you that
like,
randomly?
No. I'm like, I don't know you well enough.
And I saw you, and for those who have seen the second Jeremy's Razor commercial, you're Black Jeremy.
Yes, I am.
So I looked at you and went, Black Jeremy! And you went, Pints with Aquinas, and I was shocked that you knew who I was. And so
my wife, because I'll tell you this, my wife and I, we saw you in a distance, right? Because you were looking dapper. You're there with your wife, and I go, "Oh, hey, babe, that's Pints with Aquinas." Oh my god! And we actually, she knows your name or knew your name a lot better than I did. So to me, you're always Pints with Aquinas.
Yeah,
so I kind of,
I'll take that,
and didn't know the history either because again, new Christian. Mr. Pints, or I thought your name was Aquinas, and so she just goes Matt Fradd. She always says that, and I was like, "Wait, that's his real name?" Yeah, that's Matt Fradd. I was like, "Oh, I thought it was Aquinas." Okay, well,
I'll call you Black Jeremy. You call me Pints with Aquinas.
Yeah, there you go. And so I came up. I was like, I'm one of those. Ever since I was little, man, if I see someone that I like the work that they do, even when I was back in Hollywood, I just go up to people. And I'm like, hey, I love your work, bro. Like, watch your stuff. Like, I don't try to go over the top, but I just have to let them know. I have to talk to the person just for a second. So,
do you get good reactions?
Oh, yeah. The only crazy reaction I ever got was, you ever watch the show Community? Did you ever see that show? Yeah. Yeah,
he did.
Yeah. So there was an Indian guy on the show. He played a character, Abed. Okay. Right. And I was working, it was the first year I was living in LA, 2004 to 2005, right? And working at this restaurant right in the middle of the Beverly Center, which is a big like shopping center in the middle of Beverly Hills. So it's like a lot of people go there. And I've seen a lot of stars, so like Magic Johnson and everyone's just kind of like, okay, cool. And I see him. And I'm the kind of person where Magic didn't excite me because I'm like, I don't really care about the Lakers. But because we were big, me and my buddy were big in the community, I'm like, Abed, right? And so I went up to him and there's a few times I've done this to any type of celebrity, but I'll go up, I go, hey, man, what's up, man? And he was like, whoa, he got into a stance. I'm like, oh, hey, I'm sorry, I'm not crazy. I just wanted to say you make me laugh and it's great stuff. But that was probably one of the only times that I went over the top to meet somebody. Usually I'm a little more relaxed and chill. And I met I said Henley, I think her last name is, but Cersei from Game of Thrones.
Okay, I never watched it.
Never watched Game of Thrones. Good, because there's a lot of sex and it was just crazy anyway. But she was great in that. She was great in the Sarah Connor Chronicles, which is a TV show that I watched, was based on Sarah Connor from the Terminator movies. And she was at Shake Shack. So I'm standing in line with a buddy and we're chilling. And at the door, it has like seats there for people to wait for their to-go orders and whatnot. So we're in line. I'm sitting there, I look over, I go, oh man. I turn to my buddy. I'm like, has that Cersei over there? He's like, who? I'm like, are you kidding me? This is that time like Game of Thrones was like the show. It was the last show. And this is why the last 2 seasons sucked so bad. It was the last show everyone watched where you could talk. It was like a water cooler show. You can actually still talk about like The Sopranos was, you know. And so it was a big deal, or at least in my world or whatever. So I'm seeing her over there. She's sitting by herself. I'm like, I got to go say something. And another guy comes and he sits like a seat over and then turns his back to her. I'm like, he doesn't even know what is going on, right? And we're in the middle of West Hollywood. So we're in the middle of like people should lose their mind over her, right? So we go, we get our food and we sit down and I'm still looking at her. I'm like, I look at my buddy. I go, I got to say hi, man. I'll be right back. So I go over. And she's minding her own business, and I just kind of sit down nice and easy, and I go, and I lean in, I'm like, look, I'm not going to tell her, scream out who you are at all, but you got to get a picture with me, though. She was like, okay. So we did a little selfie down here. I'm like, and we took a little picture, and then we started chatting. I was like, oh, so what are you getting? She goes, oh, I'm getting a mushroom burger. What are you eating? I was like, oh, I'm getting meat. I'm a meat guy. She's like, oh, and we chatted and walked away. But it was just that little moment. I just love kind of doing that with people and trying to be. I'm just a normal person. Like I like to give, especially as an artist, I like to give love to the craft and what they've done and the fact that it speaks to me in the heart. You know, I like to be like, hey, you're doing some great work out there. So, you know, I don't hold back. So I was glad I came up to you because now I'm in the studio, guys. It's a lot bigger.
Very underwhelming.
No, it's beautiful. I love this. I was actually going to be disappointed to not being here because there's a boiler thing going on. And I wanted to be in the presence of all these icons, you know, and your books, and they're real books, just so everybody knows. Yeah, that was something that we were betting on.
I've read all of them.
Are you serious?
No.
Oh.
those are in Latin, so I certainly haven't read those.
That's where I was going to start. I was like, you mean you read those?
I mean, I have read big chunks of it, but
no, that's good though. No, that's better than me. I don't think I've read any of these. So there you go.
So what I know about you is you're Black Jeremy from Daily Wire.
Yes.
You're becoming Christian, or you are Christian.
I am
Sorry,
Christian,
I beg your pardon. You are a Christian.
Baptized on January 1st, 2022.
Wow. And so, okay, recent conversion. And I am legitimately excited to get to know you.
Oh, yeah, let's do it. I'm excited to get to know you, too, and tell you a little something. Yeah.
Yeah, so who the bloody hell are you?
Yeah, well, you know, I'm a first-generation American. My mom, who's actually in town now, back in Tennessee, visiting us for Thanksgiving. She moved to the States. I was actually born here in the States when she was getting her master's in nursing. Went back to our family's from Liberia, West Africa. So went back there, and then we moved back in '83 after the coup, after the military takeover. And then pretty much my younger brother was born there, and then we grew up in Chicago area, and then ended up moving to North Shore suburb called Evanston, Illinois. Beautiful town to live in, extremely liberal. Again, that's all you know. But it wasn't to where liberalism is today. It was still patriotic. We had 4th of July. We had I remember we had the parade that would happen, and the football team from the high school football team would always be in the parade. And I remember thinking, I can't wait to be a part of that. And people would come back from college just to like support that, you know. And I ended up, you know, playing football there and going in parade, which was great. It was a really great place to grow up for the time, which it really hurts me now because it's a place that has ushered in reparations for housing discrimination. from the 1900s. And I know people that I went to school with who are speaking as if their life and everything now can be rectified based on this. And I'm like, dude, we went to school together. What are you talking about? Like in the 90s, it wasn't about this thing. You weren't moving around being like, man, as a black man, we got to watch. It was none of that stuff. You know, it was about, I mean, we had a crew, like my group of best friends, it was 4 of us, 2 were black, 2 was white. And that's what we did, you know, and it was never about the fact they were white or we were black. It was just, we were friends. So to kind of see where the Evanston has become now really kind of, it hurts. You know, I know just recently, about 6 months ago, the high school started offering segregated classrooms and classes. And it's just where they can't really say it's segregated, but they'll kind of frame it in a certain way. And with the culture of, I remember reading an article saying, you know, the black kids saying they have a hard time learning around white kids. And I'm just like, this culture has been banging them over the head with this nonsense for so long that even in a place like Evanston, where I went to, you know, Martin Luther King Elementary School, where it was like, we're all here part together. Like we're all one, we're better together, all this stuff. And now they're pushing in the high school's classes to be segregated. It really hurt. You know, it's one of those things that as you get older as a man, you start seeing the reality of the world. It can hurt. But, you know, I was fortunate enough to get a football scholarship to the University of Iowa. I went to Iowa. That's when I really got caught up in the stuff, you know, because, you know, I think I was telling you earlier, at 8, I did get baptized, and we were going to church until maybe 12 or 13 when I started doing more extracurricular activities, like doing more sports, and especially stopped in high school because I started wrestling as well. And so wrestling is just, once the wrestling season starts, that's all you're doing, right? You're wrestling and you go to tournaments all day, Saturdays, and Sundays you just want to sleep, right? So, and my mom was like, okay, we're done. And so we stopped going to church. I came to find out years later, I'll put this in now just so you have an understanding. My grandfather, though, was the main pastor of the main church in Liberia, Providence Church, which I didn't find out until about 2017 when I went back to Liberia to shoot a movie there. But that, now knowing what I know now, to know that was a part of us, but yet we moved away from it as a family, it was really like looking back, I'm like, wow, it can happen even in a place where you think foundation is strong, right? And unfortunately for my mom, when she was 12, my grandfather was killed. So I can see how then the world could grab hold of someone right before they hit puberty, when life is more confusing. They've got from your daddy's baby to now your hormones are changing, and yet that male strength and that kind of calmness isn't around anymore. So, you know, if we can go into that later, but you know, so he was gone. We went away from the church. I went to college, and the thing about being a college football athlete is kind of like any generic movie, like The Program or Johnny Be Good. There's a lot of truth there, and that's when a lot of the darkness that I've struggled with in my life became more full. It came at you, alcohol and women. That's the main key, and it came at me in abundance. It came at me in a way that I didn't have the foundation to really truly fight it off. You know, I hit a time where freshman year I wasn't playing because of a red shirt, but then I started seeing stuff, you know, like, oh man, a girl can stay over because your parents aren't here. Like, this is great, you know? So, and women were, they were literally, I'll never forget this first time we're going into one of the bars at Iowa, and I'm walking with a guy who was a sophomore, and it was me and a couple other guys, and a girl, she was drunk, came over, grabbed my face and just tongued me down and walked away. And he looked at me and goes, "Welcome to college." And I was like, this is awesome, you know? Like, I mean, you know, this is, you come from like having one girlfriend or 2 girlfriends at the most in high school to now girls just throwing themselves at you. And I mean, people were offering any and everything. And I was afraid of doing hard drugs. And I'll never forget seeing the darkness of someone offering me cocaine for the first time in college. And brother, I swear to you, it was like, he was talking, everything was just light and bright. And all of a sudden he leans in, half his face goes dark. And he's like, "You want some blow?" I'm like, "Oh, no, I'm okay." He goes, "Okay, fine. It's cool." And went back to normal. And I'm just like, wow, that thing is dark, you know? But yeah, no, I got caught up in the drinking, and I got, I wasn't, the the year after I got there, the coach who recruited me, he retired, which he said he wasn't going to do. So I was my world was a little shook, right? And I'm like, well, I'm going to show him. I'm going to stick it out. Didn't understand the business of college football. The new coaching staff came in and they were looking to push their guys. And, I get it now. At the time, it was unfair. But at the same time, I got in trouble at 20 where I got a DUI, and that was on the cover of all newspapers back in Iowa. It even made it back to Evanston, where I was from. It was on the late night news. So
how did your mom react?
Moms, at the end of the day, moms was just supportive, right? She wasn't, she didn't show the level of disappointment that one could think, but she was just there. Mm-hmm. The disappointment came everywhere else. My junior and senior year in high school, I got a lot of press. So I've been, ever since I was 16, been used to interviews. Right. At one point, I had the Chicago Tribune following me in the second half of my day in school, recording and doing all this stuff, and did a thing on the news about me, all this stuff, like in Chicago, and not even like small town, like the whole thing. And so I've been used to that. So I hadn't gotten the other side of it. I've only gotten the good, yay, he's thumbs up and want to do this, did a whole, and we'll get into this later, but I'll drop it now because you understand how funny it is. At one point in an article written in the Tribune, I was telling them how I want to go to law school to become an FBI agent.
Yeah. You'll see why that's funny later, everybody.
Yes, hold on to your butts. But so that was to get the other side of it and not having God in my life, man, Matt, it was hard. It was really hard. My mom was there, but my personality wanted to show I can get through it. But at the same time, when you have random people you don't know asking you questions about hey man, what happened? How did you? And I'm thinking to myself, everybody's doing it. Leave me alone. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you're making it as if I killed somebody. I didn't kill somebody. I messed up. I was drunk, got behind the wheel of the car and drove. Like, I didn't hurt anybody, thank God. But it got me into a pretty dark place in general, which lasted for at least a decade. And I doubled down on that, right? So while that was happening, then I started, letting my schoolwork fade. I drank more, and then I wasn't getting a chance to play where I could get that adulation where I was used to, getting the cheers and all that stuff from high school. So I really had in a sense of who am I moment during that time where I'm doing football. Everyone knows me as a football player, but I'm not being successful. So it doesn't count, because in my mind at the time, I needed to be successful in what I was doing in order for it to count for who I am, right? Making the work my identity instead of now looking at it, Christ, my identity. And so where I would get the applause and the attention was at the bars. Mm-hmm. I was cool with all the bartenders, all the door guys could walk right in. The girls, wanted to get to know all this stuff. So that's where I started pouring a lot of focus into. I'd go and do football and like, yeah. And then, but I wouldn't, school was like a second thought. And not unbeknownst to me, I was really developing my alcoholism. I was really in boot camp to graduate with high honors in alcoholism, because I was just Tuesdays, Wednesdays, it didn't matter, the night before a game, if we weren't in a hotel room, or I was telling you the story, the next day after a game, if guys who didn't play that much would scrimmage the next day, I'd come in hungover, play well, so that didn't help me wanting to stop.
Yeah.
But yet coaches, when we're in a circle, would be like, somebody smells like liquor. And there was this older black coach of mine. And I'd be like, half the guys would look over at me and I'm like, go Hawks, let's get out of here.
Yeah.
And so it got to a point where I was fortunate enough, I found acting as well. Mm-hmm. I was going to be a history teacher because I like kids and I like history, but I took one acting class and I fell in love with the process, which is something that even for football, everything else, I didn't really enjoy the process. I enjoyed the finished work, but I didn't enjoy the process. And acting, I enjoyed, reading the script for the first time, putting myself in there, developing a character, memorizing, and then making, coming back out and making it my own. I love that whole process and the final, all the way up to the final. So I got involved in acting, but I still didn't let go of the alcohol because at this point, I think it was too locked into.
What did it do for you?
Confidence.
Yeah.
A false confidence that I held on to. I could talk to girls easier. I remember, I woke up one morning next to this girl, and I don't remember what I said to her, but it worked, right? Whatever it was. And I leaned in, I go, hey, do you remember what I said to you last night? She's like, oh, I mean, you're just really sweet and funny. I was like, okay. And I remember always thinking, God, I got to remember what I'm saying so that I don't have to get this drunk in order to say it, So it was confidence at the most. And it was just warm, like we're all equal in the sense, guys that were starters and playing, and me, well, we could go out and have a good time. And it wasn't like they were starters over here and I was just like the guy on the bench. We were all one now, and I could hang with the best of them and shots and beer and all that stuff, and watch, I'm gonna go get the girl you want. And so it gave me a sense of confidence that I didn't have, which I think I put into football or in high school. You find this funny. Senior year, I remember telling the team, we're not drinking at all this year, guys. And I think I was one of the few ones that didn't. Some of the other guys did, but it because football was where I got that acclaim from and that sense of purpose that could come above alcohol or even women. But since that was not doing the same thing in college, I still needed, in my heart, I still needed that thing. And that thing was coming so easily in alcohol and girls. So that's what it led me into. I know if I go out and drink, I can go dancing and be cool with the bartenders and, be able to meet these women. So it really, and then it became a crutch, because then it became, I can't go out. I can't have a good time if I don't have a shot.
Did you notice that? Was that a wake up call for you when you realized this is impossible for me to go have a good time without it?
Yes and no. I didn't notice it as if it was a problem. I noticed it as like, I know if I can go get that, then everything will chill out.
Yeah.
Right. So let me go get that. It's normal. We're at the bar, so there's not people here that don't drink. We're at a bar, right? Yeah. So I knew if I can get that first one in, boom, we're ready to party. Let's have a good time, But I did notice that. I did notice I needed that to get comfortable, but I didn't think it was a problem.
Yeah.
Right. I just had the images of men going through rough times with their whiskey and just kind of like living life and going, that's what a man is. Right. Not having my father in my life. And it wasn't like I was blessed with a big brother from the Big Brothers Big Sister program, Pete, who has been in my life forever. But It wasn't that. I think it's still different when you're visiting as opposed to when your father who's there, and there's things that come up that you can't just sit down and be like, all right, today we're going to talk about the problems with alcohol. It's sometimes you need to see it first and go, wait, let me tell you why hitting your sister is wrong. Something like that. And so the alcohol went with me so much so that I actually gave up football in school for it. And so I didn't finish school. 2004, I left, went back home for a few months, went out to LA to shoot a short film, went back, and that big brother I told you about, I was like, man, I just need like $2,500. I can go out there. He goes, oh, that's it. I'll give you that. So he gave me $2,500. And I shot the movie in July or August, and October, I was driving out to LA and in 2004, and I landed in LA on October 17th of 2004.
What did you get? Sorry, what part did you get? Did you say?
Oh no, I shot a short film.
Oh, okay, that's
and a guy that went to college with me. This is how the email he sent. He goes, hey, I just want to make sure, is this a Siaka from Iowa who used to dance on the bar and just be like the life of the party? I have this part. I think it'd be perfect for it. He flew me out and everything. And so I was like, wow, this is the life, this is acting. I get pulled out. So
this was the new direction to your life at
that was new direction.
Not football.
Yeah, but now acting, and it was something, like I said, even I enjoyed the process. So I wasn't adverse to the work that would take. Whereas in football, I'm like, I'm doing all this and not getting where I believe I can be. Screw this thing, Drove out in LA, and LA just LA made all those vices even more okay.
Yeah.
And unfortunately I did get involved in cocaine. It was crazy actually. That restaurant I worked at in Beverly, in the Beverly Center, the chef was my dealer. So it got so bad that like whatever tips I made, half of that would go to him for that day. So if it's like made $40, he's getting 20. If I made 60, he's getting 30. Like it was just, that's what's happening. And fortunate enough, God put something inside me where I could stop that on my own. I could go, when I saw it getting bad, I was like, all right, this is crazy. I got to stop. My emotions are tied to this. And it was weird because I could see that, but I couldn't see alcohol. Alcohol was because it was to me so normal in life.
Do you think it's because it's so socially acceptable?
Yeah. I definitely think that's what it was. I mean, you're seeing billboards and TV commercials, and everywhere you go, hey, you want to drink? Da, 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 da. It's like, whereas not everyone's passing around a bump,
Yeah, there's a sort of there's a vibe associated with alcohol in advertisements that have to do with celebration or reflection, coolness, or masculinity. Yeah. You don't see that with cocaine.
Especially not after the 80s. But it's and then like the girl stuff. Now you're in a place where I always say the reason why we shouldn't listen to Hollywood for our moral advice is because it deals in the flesh. It's literally what it deals in. Are you good looking enough? Are you tall enough? Do you have big enough breasts? Are you big enough muscles? Like that's literally what it deals in. The most talented is not always the ones that get the job. So it's about appearances. It's about appearances. So why would we, especially now, being a Christian and reading the New Testament and seeing what that's like, it says die to your flesh every day is what Paul tells us. But yet the world that I was in was all about flesh. It was all about how do you look? Are you good enough? Are you charming enough to the outward, appearances? So yeah, there was, ups and downs there, struggles. The biggest struggle that was the through line was the alcohol, no matter what was going on. I'd get fired from jobs, but I'd get another job in a couple weeks. So, hey, I'm still going. I break up with girlfriends or girlfriends break up with me. Well, I get another girl. But the underlining thing was alcohol. And it's weird. I could not see that with this thing, it was what was getting in the way of healthy relationships, of even taking my acting to the next level. I would go and sometimes take shots of whiskey before auditions and thinking that I was, all right, that's what you do. Not realizing the camera catches everything. So the camera was probably seeing this like off performance from a drunk guy, at the time. And fortunate enough, I tried sobriety in 2013.
What was the wake up call?
In 2013, so I was I booked a Super Bowl commercial in 2012.
Subaru?
Super Bowl.
Oh, Super Bowl. Yeah. Okay.
So it was a Bud Light commercial of all things, right? Go figure. Wow. So I booked this commercial, and I was going to literally leave to go back to Illinois, where I'm from. And I booked this commercial, which put money in my pocket. I was like, well, I guess I'm staying. And I got like an agent, manager who was like, yo, Super Bowl, let's connect. As a career, I wasn't mature enough for the things that came after the Super Bowl commercial. I wasn't completely immature where I completely threw it away, but I wasn't ready for the level of commitment. I just thought you just show up type of thing. And so I was, in 2013, I was going out to auditions, big time auditions that I just wasn't really mentally and trade wise, I wasn't skilled enough to really get. Talent wise, maybe I could have worked it out while I was in the process, but building like that foundation, it wasn't strong enough yet. And so, excuse me. And so I ended up getting a place. I needed a place really quickly. It was in Koreatown, and it was called Artist Housing. And this was nothing but a slumlord house. It was a big house that, I'll give you an example. So you had one room. The first room you had walked in, it was a couple who were meth heads. Then you had one lady, sweet woman, who was living in the middle of all that. And then on the other side of her were crackheads, or I think it was vice versa, one of the two. And then there was a basement, which in California, there's no basement housing because of the earthquakes and stuff. But there was a basement where a guy stayed down there, and he was an obese like comedian that never went out and did any type of comedy. He just would sit there and rail about how the system sucks, right? Then you had upstairs. I had the biggest room, and I was paying the most, so I was like, I'm cool because I'm paying the most, Then you had another room that people would come in and out a lot. They were just, because it was one of those places where if you were in town for a month, you pay for a month and that's it. Or if you're in town for 6 months, that's it. Then you had these other 2 rooms which had sets of bunk beds in there, between 3 to 4 bunk beds, and like foreign girls would always come in and out just because, and they would like stack on top of each other. So that was the place I was staying. And I come home one night drunk, and on the stove someone was making ramen noodles, and I'm like, I'm hungry. So I start eating the ramen noodles. And so the crackhead couple, the guy comes out, he's like yelling at me like, oh, what are you doing? You're stealing my food. Da, da, da. And so I get offended because he's yelling at me, not because I stole something, you know, like I couldn't see what his actual anger was. I was just, how dare you yell at me? Mm-hmm. So I went back and forth about him. Why are you yelling at me? Da, 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 da. I go to bed, I pass out, kind of vaguely remember what's happening. The next day, I was supposed to go help work on his motorcycle, one of the roommates. And I come downstairs. As I come downstairs, the obese guy, he stops me. He goes, hey, man, we had a discussion, and we said, if you come home drunk again, we're going to ask the landlord to kick you out. And I was like...
And this is a discussion from meth heads and crack heads. And
exactly. And I'm just like, huh. So I take my dog for a walk. I do my normal ritual, which was go down to 7-Eleven, pick up some wine, and go back to the house at like 10 a.m. And I go in my room, and I'm just laying there sipping. I'm just thinking to myself, I didn't move out here for this. I didn't move out here to get kicked out of a place by crackheads and meth heads. Like, something's got to change. And there was this couple, one of the couples that were visiting. They were from Copenhagen. Tall, blonde. I call them my elves. Everyone knows Lord of the Rings. That's like my elves in there, right? So I was talking to him. That was his motorcycle that we were always working on, and he was a really nice guy. He was in town to do his to do research about psychiatry or something like that. And they were traveling the U.S. And between him and his girl, we sat and we were talking, and he asked me, he's like, "Do you think you're an alcoholic?" And Matt, I've said this story multiple times, but it still just hits me. It was like one of the hardest things I ever had to do, was just to say, yes, I am. And as I said it, it felt like a football was coming out through my throat. I was like, yes. And it felt like it fell out. And, but at the same time, a weight that I didn't understand was gone. It was really weird, because they say in the steps is the first step is to admit that you're powerless over alcohol. That was before I was in the rooms, but that was the first step that I took. And this weight was off, where people said before, back in the, in the past, and I got DUIs and stuff. They're like, well, do you think you have a problem? No. I just unlucky. It was just unlucky. Really is what I thought. Other people do it. I just got caught. That's all it was. And then his girl asked, would you want to go to meetings? And before it was like, oh, now those people are crazy, right? Yeah. And Matt, it was just, I couldn't say yes fast enough. It wasn't me. It was weird. Yeah. It was, do you think you can go? Yeah, let's go.
Now, had they had experience with meetings?
No.
They just
wanted to help.
They just heard about the 12 steps.
Yeah, and they were just like, hey, I know meetings. And so we started, he goes, hey, I'll go with you. I was okay, let's go. And we actually went that night.
God bless him.
Yeah. Lars and Ricky, they have a special place in my heart forever. Like, I love those guys. And so we started going, and much like I do a lot of other things, I get really focused into it. And so I started going so much. I remember he was like, man, I love that you're getting better. It was like months later. He's like, I love you getting better, but I miss my friend. You're never around, And I'm like, well, it is what it is. But my past caught up to me, because
G'day, fellas. For over a decade, I've spoken to men around the world about the battles we face: temptation, apathy, anger, and the struggle to find meaning. Now, let me tell you, one of the most powerful tools I've seen for breaking free and growing closer to Jesus Christ is Exodus 90. The Exodus 90 Challenge begins this year on January 20th, but this isn't just a 90-day program. Exodus 90 is a spirituality for men in modern times built on 3 ancient pillars: prayer, self-sacrifice, and fraternity. We all long for something more, and that something is to be found in becoming the men that God created us to be, sons of a loving Father. It's time to turn away from our idols. It's time to break free from the pharaohs that hold us in bondage. If you're ready to make a fresh start and embark on a journey to uncommon freedom in Jesus Christ, then download the Exodus 90 app today. This is your chance to break free, refocus, and rediscover who God is calling you to be in the new year. We start January 20, 2025. So go to exodus90.com/Matt to learn more about Exodus 90. That's exodus90.com/Matt to join tens of thousands of men from all around the world for Exodus 90 starting Monday, January 20th.
But my past caught up to me because when it was a weekend they were leaving, I went to go play dodgeball. I was big into dodgeball back then. 2-time champion, by the way, just so everyone knows. I'm serious. And I'm leaving that evening, and the dodgeball was in West Hollywood. And as I'm leaving, some friends wanted to go to the bar, and I was like, "There's a friend from high school who was like, she was around, and I was gonna go meet her. I was like, either I can Uber home, or I can Uber to Santa Monica and go hang out." And so I'm looking at my phone, and the sheriffs kind of pull up. Looking at my phone, he go, "Hey, what's up, man?" I'm having a backpack. I'm like, "Hey, what's going on?" He's like, "Nothing." He's like, "Yeah, you mind if we check your ID?" I'm like, I'm thinking it's not a big deal.
Now, where are you in an Uber at this point?
No. I'm standing on the street, just like looking to decide what am I gonna do
with you. Yep,
right.
Yep,
I'm trying to go. Do I go to the bar with these guys? Do I go to Santa Monica, or do I Uber home? Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at my phone, and the sheriffs pull up, and I say, and they ask me, "Hey, what's going on?" I'm like, "Oh, nothing. Just got done playing dodgeball." They're like, "You mind if we check your ID?" I'm like, I got nothing to hide. It's not a big deal. So I hand my ID, and unbeknownst to me, so I got my third DUI was in 2008. I got the first 2 like back to back in college, and then had space then. And in 2008 I got it, and I thought I had done everything that I was supposed to do for the program what the courts have you do. I missed finishing, I think it was 2 programs, like the MAD program, which is like Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, and one other. And the sheriff goes, "Oh, man." I'm like, "What's up?" He's like, "Sorry to do this to you, man. There's like a $50,000 warrant out for your arrest." I'm like, "What?" At this point, I've been traveling. I've been flying. And I'm under the assumption if there's a warrant this big, if I go to the airport, they're going to be like,
"Come with us."
Exactly. Nothing. So I'm really confused. I'm like, "What?" Like, "Yeah, sorry, man, we're going to have to." It's like, "We would let you go if it wasn't so much money." I'm like, I'm just shocked. Mind you, this is 2014 now, right? And I'm like, okay. So they put me in jail that night. I had to go to the next morning. Had to go to what's called the Twin Towers in L.A. for processing and to be in jail until I'm going to the court. Actually, no, I went to court the next morning, and they were going to put me in jail that evening. But you had to go to the Twin Towers, and this was like, man, like. I'll never forget in my first year out in 2004, one kid that I was working with randomly turned to me and goes, "Don't ever go to jail because you don't want to be in the towers, man. It's the worst." I was like, "Whoa." He goes, "But if you ever go, tell them you're gay." I was like, "What?" "Yeah, they put you in." I was like, "Okay." So now I'm in this situation. And mind you, they have people packed in when they first get you in there. You're packed in, and it's like at an amusement park, or you're going in line to a TSA where they have a line on the floor, red line on the floor, right? And then they have, I would say, either blue or greenish tape outside of it, but you have to follow in that track. So people are walking like this, but it's not split up by anything except for the tape on the ground.
There's
so
no
people
ropes or barriers,
nothing. And so, I mean, there's a bunch of people just going through. I'll never forget, there was this one kid, black kid, turned to another black kid who was like 3 rows back, goes, "What set you from, homie?" "I'm this. Oh, yeah, I'll see you inside." And I'm like, we're not even processed yet. I'm just like, what is going on? So we go through, and they're like, take your clothes off. You're going to wear this for this. And now I'm putting on a jumpsuit. And we go to do the phones, or this is the point where you talk to like a guard or something about like who you are and do you have any medical stuff, and because they're required to, if you have any type of medical stuff, you're required to get it in prison, in jail. And so then they asked, they're like, are you gay or are you straight?
Yes.
Yeah. Seriously.
First of all, why did he say you should say you're gay?
He's like, because they separate you, so you're not with the real crazies.
Why would they do that?
Because something that LA and California was doing. I mean, this was few times that woke actually made sense.
But I'm just trying to understand the logic of it.
Because they didn't want the gay guys to get harassed and beat up inside with the straight men who were like more dangerous physically.
Fair enough.
And so I remember you were like, "Are you gay or are you gay?" I was like, just basically, literally what you did. I go, it all came back instantaneously. I go, "Yep."
You're like, "I'm gay," and as you say it, you're thinking, "I hope that guy didn't steer me wrong."
Yeah, no, right? I'm like, because I just saw these two guys go. I'll wait to see you get in there. I'm like, that's the normal jail. I was like, no, I'm not doing that. And so
I'm going to gay jail.
Yeah, I'm going to gay jail.
Gale.
I'm going to Gale. So we go in. They gave me like a different color wristband,
pink,
and I think it was if it wasn't straight pink, it was definitely like a lighter red, right? And so there's a section where it's like the big monitoring section where you go in to get health checked and everything. People are kind of waiting, and then you can see outside of that the little the holding cells where they had like 14, 15 men just in these little cubicles. And I'm like, man. I mean, these are like dudes who are hardened criminals in this space. And I'm looking around. One guy was so bad. He was going around there holding him. He's like, he's spitting and everything. And they had to put like, I don't know if you ever seen 13 Ghosts, but they had like a saw. They had put a metal box over his head that it could open up, but he couldn't bite at them. And he's sitting there locked into the seat that he's in. And I'm just looking over like, wow, this is something else.
Now, at this point, sorry, are you only going to prison for a night? Jail for a night?
I'm going to jail. At this point, I don't know how long it's going to put in. They had said, because I went to court, it said 2 weeks.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So they put you in jail for a night, and then I
went to court, and then they were like,
okay,
the court was like, all right, 2 weeks,
yep.
right? And you're like, and then most of the people were like, look, you could probably get out in a day or two because everything's already packed. They usually let the nonviolent ones go, and they give you like public service. You got to go do that, all that stuff. And so I'm sitting in there, and then they saw my wrist, and then they put me in one of the holding cells with the other people who were gay or whatever. There was like 6 people in there.
Oh, this is great.
Yeah. The other one was packed, and then this one was like 6 people. I'm like, okay. I'm like, all right, well, that doesn't suck. I have my own space. No one's messing with anyone. And it's not comfortable to really sleep there, but you try to get as much sleep as you can.
Yeah.
Then
did you have beds?
No. At this point we just had metal benches that were around the space, and then the floor. Which is all concrete, and your jacket, or your one part of your shirt, so you can kind of roll that up. And by California law, they have 24 hours to get you a bed, so they'll wait 23 and a half hours to get you a bed. So we were getting at one point for like 6 hours, we're in that one space. Then we move over for another 6 hours, whatever it is, to be another space. Then they get you into they finally get you a bunk bed, but this was a temporary spot before they assign you directly into a cell block. Now, this is the part that's really, it's all crazy, but this is the part that's really wild. So then what they were doing with the new guys that came in that said they were gay, they had one of the sheriffs come and ask you questions to prove that if you were gay or not. And there was a list of like 10 to 12 questions, dude.
What kind of questions were they?
For example, what magazines do you read?
Okay.
What bars do you go to?
Playgirl.
Yeah. I was like, does that work? And they're like, what bars do you go to?
Gay ones.
West Hollywood, period. No. And here's the thing, because again, some of my best friends are gay, so I knew the stuff. I knew that the answers, right? So I could fill it in.
That's funny. So word had apparently got out such that they now had to interview you to see if you were really gay.
I guess so. Well, because one of the guys too was like, yeah, I'd like to get in the gay one because the straight one is just violent. And so I've tried to get in before, but they didn't accept me. So I'm trying it again. This is what this one guy was telling me. I was like, oh, they actually test you? I was kind of wild. I was like, wow, this is crazy. So they're going through, and then my acting skills came in.
Hold up a picture of Brad Pitt. And
just
he's
so
watch your
hot.
retinas.
I'm like, that's high level, like everything. Young Brad too, not old Brad. But so he's asking me this question. I remember sitting there as he's asking me, I'm like, this is a violation of civil rights here. Like, you're not, how are you going to test somebody, right? And it was funny too, because like he asked a question because one of the questions was like, did you come out? How did you come out, and who'd you come out to? So I was like, damn it. I had to kind of think. I came up with a story. I was like, I told my prom date, and she was really sweet, one of my best friends, and it was just such a beautiful moment. Like I said this whole story, and then they put me in the gay cell. So I was like, or the gay cell block. So I'm like, all right, it can be a movie on its own.
I know it. A lot of it sounds bad and traumatic. Yeah. It also could be an amazing comedy.
Oh, it's an amazing comedy, because once I got in there, it was like a whole different world.
People were drinking tea.
There was
carpet.
It was a gay prison Wizard of Oz. Right. So there was
what that means. What does that mean?
I'm going to break it down. So there's bunk beds and there's sections. I haven't talked about this. This was 2013. I haven't talked about this in a while, 13, 14. And so we get in there, and of course I'm fresh meat, I'm new. Mm-hmm. So everyone's looking, but it's not the other cell blocks where they're just going to take it. Mm-hmm. They try to woo you. Oh, hey, what's going on? Do you need anything? If you need any extra soap, let me know. I'm like, no, thank you. I'm like, oh no, I'm good. Thanks. And then, I remember seeing a big garbage can, like a huge plastic one, where one of the transvestites who just had female breasts or breast implants was taking a bath in there so he could like kind of hide and come up and I'm just like, okay, there's that. Toilets are wide open, showers are wide open. I'm like, okay, well, wow, here we are. And so there are different areas and sections. And I go to my bunk area, and then there's this white guy. I don't know if he came up to me or whatever, but he was white guy, kind of your build actually, but bald head, and he had a super long white, like you could tell it was for a fat guy's undershirt, but it was super long on him down to like below his knees, right? And his name was Casper. Mm-hmm. That's what they call him, Casper. And so he was giving us the tour of this place. And he's like, oh, over there, so-and-so over there. And he's like, come on, I'll take you over here. Like he was just like the friendliest, nicest guy going around. And then he introduced me to his guy, who was this like 6'3" black dude, brother, who looked like Ving Rhames. It wasn't friendly. He's like, oh, this is my guy. Oh, man, I wish I could remember his name. Like
Giggles.
Let's say Giggles. And he's like, what's up? How you doing? I'm like, hey man, nice to meet you. Like I'm not trying to get your guy. Don't worry about that. And it was just a very interesting space that thank God I didn't have to stay in there for more than that evening really. But everyone, because I can tell being in Hollywood for as long as I can tell when someone likes you because they like you, or they're trying to get you. Because fortunately, like I said earlier, Hollywood is a flesh industry, and a lot of men have tried to offer me things in Hollywood for my career. So and in college, I was around a lot of gay guys. They saw when their attempts. So I knew when people were being nice in this situation.
Can you break that open for me? What do you mean for my career?
Oh, hey, come to this premiere party with me, and I'll introduce you to a lot of important people. But I knew if I went with this one guy, everyone would go, that's his new arm candy. So it wouldn't be just two friends going to someone. It'd be like, here's his new guy.
I gotcha.
One guy said, oh, I'm going to have you kissing me before the night's over. One of the first things I saw was a guy, one of my good friends from college. He got me a job catering, and we first saw all these stars like Nicole Kidman and John Stamos, all this. And he's bartending on bar backing. Satellite bar, and this tall guy, British cat, he comes forward and he's like, let me ask you, my friend's like tall, kind of like a Brad Pitt looking guy. He's like, are you gay or straight? And my friend's like, I'm gay, I'm sorry. He goes, you're about as, or he goes, I'm straight, sorry. He goes, you're about as straight as a pretzel. And I'm standing there watching, like, cleaning the glassware, being like, what's Kurt gonna do? Like, what's going on? And the guy walks behind the bar and puts his arm around him with a big bear hug, like, and like kind of like he turns his head towards it, like this way. So I see him, and he's like giving like a very, and Kurt's like, yo, bro, I'm sorry, get off me. And I'm just like, whoa, what's going on? I mean, I've had well-known individuals ask, like, one guy asked me that he wanted me, but I'm like, what? I met you with your girlfriend. What are you talking about? He goes, oh yeah. He's like, well, we can do a whole thing. He basically wanted me to hook up with that whole thing. And it was like, so His name was he went by P something. I can't remember his last name. No, it kind of sucks because it was a famous comic book guy, and I was big into comic books, so I was like, oh man. And like I knew it was weird when he signed his comic book and put his phone number on it. And I'm like, why would you ruin it with your phone number? Just your signature, brother. But I'm in this jail situation. Everyone was super nice because I think they were kind of trying to position themselves for something. But that night when I was asleep, somebody woke me up. Hey, Siaka, they're calling you. I'm like, what's up? And so the guards came and called me, got me out, and were going to offer me work release. So I can do community service instead of doing 2 weeks in jail. Mm-hmm. But the time that I was in jail, like no one could find me in the system because I wasn't technically processing that 24-hour space yet. Mm-hmm. So, excuse me, my best friend who I called, he was looking for me, couldn't find me. He called like his high-powered lawyer he knew. Like no one could find me in the first 24 hours because I wasn't in court anymore, but I technically wasn't fully processed yet in the cell block. But so the courts were like, hey, okay, you're going to do community service. Got out. But that weekend was the last weekend that my friends, Lars and Icky, the Scandinavian elves, they were actually getting in the car that Saturday to drive over to drive across country back to New York, and then they're going to fly back home. So I missed saying goodbye to them. It was, oh man, it broke my heart. And lucky enough, I had another good roommate looking after my dog. And it was just really wild. And I was able to get out, get back home, and everyone told me what happened and what was going on and whatnot. And I was able to contact them and say, hey, I'm okay, because no one knew what had happened. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't like anyone in the house I was going to reach out and talk to.
How's your parents, or your mom rather? Is she aware of this?
No, God, no. I was not telling her. I'd already broken her heart enough, and not going through college and getting in trouble with DUIs in college and then all that. I'm like, I'm not going to tell her.
I'm just rolling.
I know. I'm
casually.
Like, I'm like, oh, can we do it now? Is this where we can?
I mean, you can smoke whenever you want, if you want.
But we'll get that in. But yeah, no, so it was.
You didn't tell her.
This guy's good.
Yeah,
this guy's
quick.
good.
He's quick.
Yeah, no, it was. I didn't want to tell her any of that stuff because I didn't want her to worry. You know how we do with our moms. We're like, if she doesn't need to know, I'm not going to say it. But yeah, no, that was a very interesting time. I always said I should write like a little TV series based on those characters in there.
Yeah.
I've been in a lot of different situations, high level to low level, and everything in between. And that's just one of those stories that got me there. And I was, but in jail through all that stuff, because this was my beginning of introducing a God of my understanding in my life, right? So I was actually fine. I was moving very calm. I knew I didn't know the God of the Bible in that way, but I knew God had my back. Yep. Because I saw him in the work he was doing with me in my sobriety. So I was like, I know I'm going to get out and just go back to it. And I didn't want to drink even after I got out. It didn't come back. None of that stuff came back because I knew God had me. But I hit a point where I started dating this one girl. And of course the two vices, you know how the Lord likes to do. You're really good, huh? Okay, let's see. And I was working this job where I was making good money. I just got offered a place to stay, which is in a whole nother part of Los Angeles, which is which was a better place for me to stay instead of that house. I bought a car cash, I was doing well.
Yep.
And me and this girl were hot for each other, and I actually liked her, but she was more like, I just want to hook up type of thing. I didn't really get that, and we ended up one day I was taking her for a nice romantic, at this point it was like a year and a half of sobriety. I was taking her for this romantic picnic, right on the top of this little hill ridge that overlooked a bunch of LA. And we're there, and I actually got her, nice cheese plate platter. Nice. But I got her the bottle of wine that so there's two wines that she picked on our first date. And then she told me weeks later, she's like, I've been thinking about that other wine. So I went and got her that other wine that she didn't pick. Okay. And so I'm like, here. And And then I pour me a glass and she gave me a look. I go, oh, I never said I wouldn't ever drink again. That was the out that I gave myself. I was like, I'm just not drinking now.
Yeah.
Right now, I just can't do it. And so we have this, and she gave me a look. We have this glass of wine together. I thought it was romantic. I'm drinking with you. Like, you're special. Which is, I know better now. It's not what you want to do. And we drank that night. Of course, that night we're drunk and we ended up hooking up. First time we were together physically was after being drunk. And a week and a half later, we were broken up and I'm drinking a handle of whiskey to go back to sleep again after not drinking for a year and a half, 19 months actually. So I had to go back through the ringer, but fortunate enough, I was only out for 5 months and I was working a job with Crest Oral-B where I was traveling the country to do conventions. And the people who ran the presentation company, Scott and Kim, they're just amazing human beings, godly people. One of the first conservatives I really was around consistently. We used to debate about conservative versus liberalism, all that stuff. And I had an incident happen in month 5. I was out at work and a couple of people there pulled me aside and talked to me. And the difference now than it was before I went to AA was they would say like, hey, I'm only saying this because I love you. Yeah. This time I could hear it. Yeah. Where the time before I was like, no, I was just unlucky. No, I know you love me, but I was just unlucky. No, it's not me, Yeah. This time I was like, wow, yeah, it is true because I saw it. All right. They say you can have a belly full of alcohol, but a head full of AA and you're just like not going to be happy drinking. Right. And so 2 people from work talked to me on the side. And then when I got back to LA, the couple called me, the people who own it, and we had a great conversation, cried on the phone together. Like, it was just like, they were just like, we got you no matter what. Wow. And at this point, the next time I was going to see them was going to be in end of March. And so I had just gotten, the place I was staying was only a sublet lease. So I was only there for 6 months. So I needed a new place. So I was looking around. And a guy I went to high school with let me stay in his sunroom on an air mattress that deflated at night. So by the time, by the morning, I was literally waking up on the floor every morning.
Sure that's every air mattress ever.
Actually, I had a pretty good one from my mother-in-law recently that worked like gangbusters. It was automatic, but that's another story.
We can debate that later.
Yeah. And so I'm waking up literally on the floor every morning. And I would, on March 15th of 2016, I decided, I was like, I'm going to go back in the rooms. And so I get up to, I think I had my rollerblades at the time, so rollerblade to the meeting. I walk in, and the first one I look over to the left, and I see my first acting teacher from college. And he's like, hey, and there's a seat right over me. Like, he just points to the seat, and I'm like, oh. I look up the other way, and I see this girl, beautiful blonde girl, former Playboy model, who I met 2 months earlier at a friend's like football, basketball, all Chicago party, right? It was the Chicago Bulls Bears. And I brought a whiskey and I was like, hey, you want whiskey? She's like, oh no, I'm sober. I was like, oh, I used to do that, but I passed. Now I'm looking at her and she's like, hi. And I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to be here. And so I sat down, and that's that time going into sobriety. The second time was different because I actually read the big book. We did the step work from the big book. I was part of the community. I would, lead meetings. I would be a secretary, a coffee. Like, I would be a part of it. So it was different this time. I was like, this is what you have to do. My friend and I, we did a business. And so we got this house. He was living with his wife and kids, so he couldn't be there. So I was the one that was going to manage the house, which then I got into this 4-bedroom house with a pool in the backyard. And I'm going I'm like, I have to stay sober. This is my best friend. I've known since we were 17. He's putting money into this thing. I can't mess up, so sobriety became real to me in a different way than just like wanting people not to be upset with me. It was a real way of like, look, I have to show my appreciation for him, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't, who knows where I'd be right now, and if it wasn't for sobriety, he wouldn't trust me to be in this situation. Yeah. And ultimately, he wouldn't trust me around his kids, my godsons, who I love to death, and, it was, man, God has been so good to me, because there's so many things I've done in the past to him, let alone to just my own mother and relationships that I shouldn't be in the space that I'm in based off my own thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was crazy because it just all made sense. It all started making sense, and then boom, everything turned around. I'm living in a nice place. My acting career from 2000 to 2017, I get literally, I don't have to audition. I get reached out to on Facebook. Hey, I'm doing a movie in Liberia. Do you want to be in it? I'm like, what? So I get to travel to Liberia for the first time as an adult to shoot a movie about the history of the country.
Oh, how beautiful.
It's called Providence Island if you want to see a really average demon. But
really
it was beautiful
film.
But it was beautiful because it was the first major film shot in Liberia.
All right.
When we're driving to the first day we were there, we're doing like a program for the locals, like, you know, acting and directing and all this, which is really great. And as I'm coming in, I'm talking to my mom on the phone, like, hey, I made it. She goes, hey, I was reading the script. You know that church you're doing it in? I was like, yeah. She goes, that's your grandfather's church. I was like, what?
You didn't know that?
I had no idea.
Wow.
Because unfortunately, my family, my mom's side, we didn't really talk about history. I've only really started finding out about my history in the last like 4 to 6 years. And I go there and I'm going up to do the acting portion of it, and I'm doing improv. So I bring 2 people up. Now to speak English in Liberia, but it's patois, so it's very colloquial. It's like hard accent sometimes to really understand. So I'm in there. I go, I'm going to speak very clearly, very precisely, be very clear with my words so they can understand. So we're doing an improv thing, and I'm just really into it. I'm sweating. I'm an easy sweater if you already can't tell. I just sweat easily. And so I'm sweating. I'm really getting into it. And after we were done, the other actor who was from Ghana, he comes up. He's like, hey, Siaka. I'm like, what's up? He goes, just so you know, man, no one understand what you just said. I was like, what? Accent. And everyone starts laughing. I'm like, what? And I'm like sitting there sweating, thinking I just put it on. You know, I was like, you're gonna get all of my experience. And he's like, no one understand a word you said. And I'm like, oh, all right, well,
I guess we'll do that again.
Yeah, I was like, that sucked. But no, it was a great experience. And my big scene is in the church. And I'm sitting in, when we get into church, I'm sitting there, I'm looking around. I look up, and there's a plaque of pastors. And I see my grandfather's name on that plaque.
The first time you're seeing it?
The first time I'm seeing any of this stuff. First time I've heard about it was on the phone a couple days earlier. Now I'm sitting there looking at this, and I'm just like,
no, but I mean,
whoa.
Is that the first time you're noticing his name on the plaque, or did you notice it when you first came in?
I noticed it when I first came in the sense of like, wow, this is happening. Sure. But the scene, I'm now sitting here and I'm just like, this is God. Like, how I didn't do enough acting work in my mind to believe that I'm supposed to now I earn the right to be here or anything like that. It's like, look what God's given me with what I love to do. Yeah. And that's when God was starting to get even more real. Not something about the stuff, but the overall, like every impact where I'm like, how did I get here? You know? And then career wise, I started booking TV shows and commercials left and right and movies. So I was going. Okay. I was working until 2020. I remember one of my friends who'd been in the industry, he was a child actor. I was like, yeah. He goes, what are you up to now? I was like, I'm just acting, bro. And he gave me a stat. He goes, you know, only 1% of actors say they only act to take care of their expenses. I'm like, whoa. He's like, you made it. You're 1%. And it was like, wow. It really took me back because I was always in his mind of like, I can't wait till I make it. Yeah. And now I'm in here. I'm doing the stuff. I'm on phone calls to be like, we're going to go overseas to shoot a movie. I'm on TV shows. Like one commercial I shot a commercial for Comcast one week. The following week came back and these guys were like sending me, or it was Bank of America one week. Next week I'm doing Comcast and these guys are getting me lit up and stuff. And the DP, he looks over, he goes, did we work with you last week? I'm like, yeah. And we're in Sony doing this. And I'm just like, wow, this is, I made it, you know. It was really amazing, man. It was really cool till 2020.
Yeah, I was actually in California from 2012 to about 2015, so we were just up the road from each other.
And you just missed me.
Just missed you. Maybe we bumped into each other. I don't know.
And 15, you probably would have gotten a different type of guy. I would have been a nice guy and all that, but I would have been trying to, let's go out and drink. Let's get after it, bro. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was definitely a different time. And and then
I was thinking, you know, our deepest desire, and this is, we know it. We know it superficially, but it is one of the deepest truths of us. I think Our deepest desire is to be seen and to be loved. Seen, known, and loved. And if we won't be loved, then, then I'd rather not be seen. But if I can be unseen and kind of loved, and by loved I mean accepted, I'll settle for that. That feels good. I mean, that's what we're doing, aren't we? Like as teenagers, what you were doing. It's like, I just want to be accepted.
That's really what it was.
But then it's not enough, right? Because I know who I am. Like I know the wretch that I am. I want you to see me, really to know me and to love me. That's a scary place to be.
Well, and also in that I was always into like comics and sci-fi.
Yeah.
And so I thought, because I started getting recognition from women because of football. So at the same time, I was part of me was, I think it was afraid that if anyone really got to know what I really liked, they wouldn't like me.
Okay.
So when football wasn't happening, well, this thing is what they like. Let me do this thing so that they can like me. They don't need to find out about the other stuff yet. About I like Sarah McLachlan and all that stuff. Like I like to cry in the dark. No, it's like and so I was always very. I remember one girl said to me, they were like, "Yeah, the girls say you're different." I was like, "What does that mean? Am I different?" They're like, "Ah, they just think you're a little more sensitive." I'm like, "Oh, damn, that's not a good thing," because I wasn't just in and out and didn't care in that way. I was, even if I was moving that way, I always tried to like, you okay? Everything's good, But it ultimately was to be seen. And for the women, they gave me the validation, with being with them. And the guys gave me validation because I was getting the women.
Yeah.
So I was getting validation in some way that then I wasn't getting because of football, which I had wrapped my identity in. And that, looking back, that was a mistake, a huge mistake.
So 2020 hits and what? Everything shuts down or?
Yeah, everything shuts down.
Things change?
I was actually, so March 15th, my sobriety date is actually the Ides of March, right? If you know Shakespeare.
No.
Shakespeare and Julius Caesar writes, "Beware the Ides of March," which is March 15th when he was killed. It's a big moment in the play too. So I'm like, wow, that happened to be my sobriety date, which is a play. Like kind of, as an actor, you're like, oh, that's good. And so I was doing a play, and I got to a point where, I'm working a lot, but the audition process was hitting this. It was getting really frustrating to audition. You get like 8 to 10 pages. You memorize it all. You do work for the character. And you're ready to go, and you kind of feel this is yours. You go in. They love what you do, but you don't get the part. And you're like, I'm just getting sick and tired of that process. Like, I just wanted to. If you want me to work, bring me in. I'll do my job, right? Yeah. And
it's like keep getting your hopes up, just have them dash. That's gonna be tiring.
There was this one Russo Brothers show called Citadel, and I'd gone in. I read for one of the leads. The casting director, I was one of the last ones there. The casting director stands up and applauded and came and gave me a hug.
Whoa!
And I'm like, it was for Amazon. I was like, this is it. I was like, this is the show. This is it. I'm ready to rock. Let's go, right? And weeks pass, and I'm hitting up my agent. I'm like, hey, or manager. I'm like, hey, do you find out what's going on here? Oh, nothing yet. Fast forward a month later, she was like, oh, they moved casting to England. So I was like, it's like that stuff can happen, which has nothing to do with me or my talent. It's just what they'll do for whatever reason. And so I lost out on it. Was just that getting tired of that. And so I wanted to get the love of the process back. So what do? I go back to a play because that's where I was first, love the process. I was doing this play. It was a new play. It's called like Four Funerals, I think it was, or something like that. And it was like movement and dance and music. It was kind of a dreamy type of play. So it's in and out of reality. So you don't know if that scene was real or what they're seeing over here. It was really kind of out there play. So it was like exactly what I needed to be in. And I was loving the process. I was loving the people I was working with. There was a dance number in there I did, which was like to be doing movement and dance. And a lot of people and the stuff that I've done, I don't get to do all my abilities, like to move like that. I don't really get to do that. Just usually it's right here in your face and your emote. And that play was supposed to open on March 15th of 2020.
Yep.
And so they had the stuff started coming out, 2 weeks slow spread, what's going on, this, that, and the other, and then they shut it down. And they shut it down, and I was like, wow, okay, well, those first couple weeks, that first month was awesome in LA. because you can get to anywhere in 20 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I lived by the airport, so planes weren't flying over for a while. And it was just, my best friend took off with his kids back to Nebraska where he's from. So he was like, I'm not, just in case it blows up in LA. So I'm basically in this house by myself with my dog. We're just chilling. It was like one of the nice little moments in the sense, the calm before the storm. So then, you know, the summer started to happen and we started seeing what was going on there. But me and my best friend, he came back. We started arguing about, he's like, the country's lost. And I'm like, no, I'm seeing online people are fighting. And he's like, okay. The next day we go down to we started doing recall Gavin Newsom. We started doing the recall tables.
Hang on, what do you mean people are fighting? You said people are fighting.
They're fighting back because he was like, the country's lost.
In what sense?
For if they're going to vote for Trump or not.
Because it was 2020 and he was like, politically.
At this point, I started becoming conservative. I voted for Trump in 2016, but I kept my mouth shut because I was in Hollywood and I watched people lose their minds. I watched people start to call Trump supporters all these different names, and I'm sitting there quietly because what they're doing, and unbeknownst to them, is their racism is showing by assuming because I'm black, I didn't vote for Trump. So they can say whatever they want around me about people like my best friend I've known since I was 17. So when they're saying this stuff about people, I'm just sitting here going, wow, you're such a garbage human being. You're a terrible person. You don't even see it. I remember we did this acting group where we're online doing Zoom together just to kind of keep up the skill. And one lady, a black girl, she's like, we were talking about something and she goes, yeah, and I don't really hang out with white people like that. Like, and she gave a look like, ugh, like, and I'm just like, and I looked down.
Imagine if that was reversed.
Exactly. And I'm looking down. One guy was from Iran, one girl was from Israel, and then the other guy was black, and I was black. And I think it was a white girl too, so they kind of like accepted it. And I remember I was reading something for what I was going to read, and I was looking down. She said it, and I'm like, don't look up, because if I look up, I'm going to show it.
Yeah.
Right. So I just was like, and then they all start laughing. I know, white guys, and I'm just like, this is crazy. And I've heard it before, but for some reason, it just hit really hard at this moment.
Did you ever lean that way? Was that ever a temptation?
No.
Where does it come from? Like, I mean, okay, maybe it's a bigger question I'm asking, because you said you grew up in the 80s and 90s. Yeah. And it didn't seem like a big deal.
No, it did.
And I'm not from America, so I'm actually asking you, like, was there a point where things changed?
It was the cancel culture that made it okay to completely diss white men, especially like that, the toxic masculinity type of trope.
I see.
It wasn't because it started just like I would say the Daily Wire, or not Daily Wire, the Daily Show made it okay to ridicule Republicans for what their side was. And once you can start ridiculing people, it can easily move into just like disregard and ultimately hate for them. All right. And so I saw that in the Daily Show in the early 2000s, and saw how they made everything that a Republican would say was just already crazy. Then it got to a point where they're the bad guys.
Okay.
And the same thing happened with white guys, where it's like, you can make fun of them. Ha ha ha. They're always like this and not like that. You know, and everyone else is better. Then it hit a point where we got to get rid of them type of mentality. So people could say these things around there. And it started coming from white people also. So it wasn't just coming from minority communities, it came from white people. As a white man, I need to blah, 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 blah. As a white woman, and I'm like, wow, this is crazy. And I've had nothing but, I've had great experiences with all races, you know? So it's like, how can you say all one side is one way or not? Like, that's crazy. Some of my best friends, you know, are white. My best friend's black. No, you know, it's like that kind of thing. And so I think it just came from the being okay to cancel people.
Did you have friends at the time who you could look to and go, am I crazy, or are what they say? This seems like the actual racism.
Yeah.
When they're saying, well, you know, assuming you must vote Democrat because you're black.
Yeah. That was the thing. My best friend Brian and I said, we met back in 1997 on our recruiting visit. He played baseball. I played football.
Uh-huh.
And our recruiting visit, I was like, man, you should come here. It's going to be awesome. He's like, baby. And we hit it off and been cool. And I didn't know at the time either. He believed in Jesus, and he was conservative the entire time.
Yep.
And yet he was just and I already at that time I had an idea of what Republicans were, which wasn't him. And I'm like, whoa! It kind of blew my mind as we got to know each other, and then we, you know, going through LA trials and tribulations together. I'm like, this guy's there. He has my back.
Is he black or what?
No, he's a white guy. Half Mexican, half white, but
So Halvesy.
But he could pass as a white guy.
I'm just trying
no, it's true. But he's one of those guys that like he could look Armenian if he wanted to, or he could look like, a straight white boy. And it's like, so he kind of always kind of floated. He was one of those guys where he allowed himself to float.
But during this time where you're experiencing, what do they call that? They kind of
say awakening.
What's that?
Awakening?
Yeah, well, I guess, do you have friends in your life who you're trying to process this with? Like, hey, these people are saying this and it seems racist to me.
Yeah.
So you have friends
Yeah. I had Brian. I actually had this other guy that grew up, he was like 4 years older than me, grew up in the same hometown. And black guy, Nigerian. So the other thing too is African parents raise their black kids differently than Black American parents.
Okay, yeah.
Because they don't have, where do they come from? They come from a place where it's all black people.
Yeah.
So they don't have, the man, it's either you do or you didn't. That's it.
Yeah, right.
Right? So they come here with that mentality. So while there still be the idea of racism that exists, it's not the reason why you don't get your education, you don't get a good job, you don't take care of the stuff you need to take care of. That's not an excuse.
Okay.
Which I found that was different between my Black American friends and my African, friends. Okay. It was just like, that's not what it was. So
interesting.
This guy was like, he was spotting this stuff early. So he was dropping, it hit a point where he was dropping so much like what's really going on type of stuff. I got paranoid. There's points where like I would sleep during the day because it felt safer. And at night I'd stay up because I'm like, they know that I know now.
Hang on.
Yeah.
Break that open. They know that I know. What does that mean?
It's like they know that I know this whole thing is just all a psyop against us, like against the average person. This was like 2012, so I was still drinking a little bit. So I was like, that didn't help. But he was breaking down like, oh well, this is to actually do this to get us all to kill us at the end of the day, or the education system
to kill who?
The people in general. Like the education system is set up to keep you dumb so that they can use, they can rob you blind.
I see.
Abortion is sit there and push in a certain community because they want to ultimately end, brown and black people's chance to grow as a population. All these things that was pitched as healthcare, good for you. This is what you like. All these things he was pointing out and showing me the origins of them and who it came from. And you're like, wait, that's a Nazi. Wait, that's eugenics. Wait, they're trying to destroy us. Wait a minute,
Margaret Sanger.
Margaret Sanger, and they're trying to, we're learning about the welfare state and how, after the 64, 65 Civil Rights Act, that was actually the beginning of the end for the black family.
Okay, you need to slow down for me, and
Sorry.
I apologize. No. I apologize.
I get into it. Yeah.
No, the reason is I'm not from here.
Yeah.
So I'm still learning. So I have my own kind of interpretation of what was going on when I arrived here. Like I remember when I arrived here, I felt like there was this. I don't know, people were trying to tell me I was racist.
Yeah.
And I remember being afraid to even admit that I think that it seems like people are doing that in case that made me a racist for noticing that. Because being a racist is one of the worst things you actually could be. And no one wants to be that.
Exactly.
And we all, if we're decent people, want to be reflective and go, well, if I am, I don't want to be like that. What I didn't realize at the time is that was all, I was being manipulated. So now I have no problem if you call me a racist. I'm happy to tell you to go to hell. Yeah, because,
in a handbasket, no,
because I know I'm not,
and that's what more people should do.
I think now people are waking up to it.
Because
but there was a time where you're called that. It's like you can't advance the argument because you're too busy apologizing for nothing.
But that's the point. That's the rules for radicals. That's Saul Alinsky. It's like if you can get people to defend as opposed to go on offense, then
I know, a little bit about that, but I didn't know that was part of it. But that's funny that I just accidentally articulated that.
Well, yeah, it's a color revolution is what they do, right? And I actually saw this movie called Coddling of the American Mind. It was based off that book. Okay. And went to the premiere of that, and it was really interesting because they talked about the color communism or color revolution of it. And you just pointed out, you framed it perfectly. You said, being a racist is actually really bad, and you don't want to be really bad. So think about these kids in junior high, elementary school, junior high, and high school. White straight is bad. But you could also be non-binary. You could be gay. You could be queer. You could, which likes both. So, and these are the good guys. The bad guys are white straight. Black, you're inherently just a minority in slavery. So it doesn't matter if you're straight or not. It's just, you already got it because you're black. But if you're white, you can't just be white straight because that's already bad. So we've seen, I think it came out a couple years ago, how kids, this generation is identifying at a 40 to 45% clip as like whatever. They're identifying as that. It's like, well, because they're teaching them in school, that's good, normal is bad.
Right.
And so that's the ultimate push, which gets us to do what? There was a group, and I don't know if you know Seth Gruber.
That's familiar.
Yeah, you should actually have him on your show. This is Seth will, you want your mind blown about the work that they've done to really ruin society. He did a movie called The 1916 Project. And in that, it talks about, and I've seen the book that he got it from, which was like this few copies left. He actually got to talk to the author, who was like 98, you know. And they did a thing where Planned Parenthood Worldwide, which is Margaret Sanger's organization, they had a big meeting in England, and a bunch of leaders from around the world came together, and they were discussing they needed to do two things. One, lower marriage rates, and lower birth rates. This is 1916.
Yeah. Wow.
So in that effort, one of the big moves that Margaret wanted to push was we need to move women away from motherhood to womanhood. Oof. So it changes mentality. So while a woman can be like a woman's health care. So they remove themselves from the idea of what they're built for, which is to be mothers. Like you're built to be a father, myself. Yeah. Women are built to be mothers. They wanted to move that out of the zeitgeist completely. Now we see where we are almost 100 years later, a little bit over 100 years later. And you're like, oh, actually almost exactly 100 years. And you're just like, wow, they have been working on destroying the family for a long time, which is ultimately a communist thing, which is ultimately the enemy. Yeah. Seth says something great where he goes, every battle that we're facing here on earth is a proxy war for the spirit. Every battle. And when you start to really break it down from education to race relations to, you know, battle of the sexes, if
feminism,
you will, feminism, it's all a battle for the spirit. Because as I got into the word, I started to see, wait a minute, the world's teaching me everything opposite this book. Whether somebody wants to believe in Christianity or not, they go, okay, why are they pushing everything opposite this book so hard? Something's up.
And they're saying it with a smile and with glitter and with big lights and
big
smiley
lights and
faces.
Money and access and fun times. And so people go, well, you know, you can see how a kid, and I'll bring up like Justin Bieber, can get caught up in this, what he got caught up in with Diddy. Because he was like a 15-year-old kid, didn't know any better, getting all the stuff thrown at him. And now you see where his journey has come from the darkness to Christ as his savior. And you're like, man, it's just the dark people. I said this to my mom when I tried to tell her stuff. I was like, you don't understand the level of darkness that exists. And I think part of it is a lot of people don't want to. And I get it. You know, it's not fun to look into the darkness like that all the time and find out that, you know, a whole industry that entertains you is possibly involved in destroying kids' lives sexually. Like, you don't want to believe that.
Yeah.
You don't believe people you've listened to for advice are involved in destroying other people's lives based on the fact that they just can.
Yeah.
It's
what would have happened if you had have spoken up? Like if somebody if you had said, actually, I'm not really going to vote Democrat. Or when someone said, I don't hang out with white people, if you had went, that kind of sounds a bit racist. I mean, people don't like to be challenged at all. People tend to react negatively to being challenged, especially in public.
You know,
but did you have any kind of private conversations with people who held different views that were open?
Yes, but not as an open conservative.
Okay, so you kind of hid that.
Yeah, I was like, I asked questions. Mm-hmm. So this one, I won't say the person's name because I'm contractually obligated not to.
Okay.
But I worked with a brother of one of the biggest stars in the world, and we're putting together this a script for a movie. And we worked together for like 5 years on this. And in I think it was the midterms, they hosted it was 2016 actually. They hosted a whole a props party where you come and we read the props and see what's this, that, and the other. And one of them was a bathroom thing, like we let the assigned, or what if somebody believes they are, go in the bathroom and stuff like that. And I remember asking, I was like, how do we know that they actually are truly what they say they are? Like, why would we just give them access like that?
Could I just say that right now? And could I be allowed?
And his wife, her reaction was the same reaction that I saw. Because one of the things about being an actor, at least for myself, is I recognize patterns really quickly, right? It's like, memorizing lines and kind of seeing how the rhythm of a scene should play out. And so I recognized the way she responded was exactly the same way people responded about when there was a pushback against the gay push that was happening in the 90s. Like, you sure your kid's gay? Oh, he's born that way. They know it in their souls. And How dare you even question? She literally went the same way. And I'm like, interesting. It pulled me back. And I'm like, well, all I'm saying is there should be something that we should know better. And she's like, I mean, I've spoken to these kids and they're crying. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, like, what is that? I'm like, what? Why does that matter? You know? But just the reaction. I'm like, we can't have
seem like a rational reaction.
Exactly. And so I saw also instantaneously, I knew something's up. Something was up in that. And then with that same guy, do you remember the Covington Catholic kid? Right, that made a big thing. Them. And I remember watching that. And finding out
one kid in particular,
right? And he was standing there, and he had this smirk. This just like
it
wasn't a smirk.
I
actually.
Like everybody. When I saw that, when I first saw that, well, here's what's funny: you get lied to enough by the mainstream media, and you just start to doubt everything, no matter how it looks.
Exactly.
I think certainly after that experience, because he looked like a smug jerk when they framed it the way that they did, when they cut it the way that they did. You're like, oh wow, okay. And then as somebody who, doesn't want to be racist, you're like, okay, well, this is something I can get really on board with. I didn't do this, but you could see why people
how you
would
can
fall
accept
into
it. You go, I see it. But then when they backed it up and the whole thing, and you're seeing this kid,
he was terrific. He was stoic.
That was an example. I didn't know at the time. That was a Christ-like example where he stood there, and there was a moment. If you go back and watch it, where he almost broke, and it almost broke him. You see him. He's like. And I saw his quiver like it was about to, and he just,
God bless him.
And I was like, whoa,
what a man.
And so that guy I was talking about, he's like, oh, I mean, like these covering the Catholic kid wearing the MAGA hats, and they're just this, that, and the other. And I'm like, and this guy has a son who was, I think, 20 something at the time. I go, yeah, but that was just a kid, man. A kid's like 17.
Now, at this point, did you realize that he was the victim in this?
Oh yeah, because I'd already voted for Trump, and I was hearing how people were talking. I was like, these people are crazy. But you're just like gently trying to nudge people without going all in. Yeah, about being like, are we really thinking about this properly? Yeah. Right. And so I'm like, that's a 17-year-old kid. I'm like, well, if that was your 17-year-old kid, would you think the same thing? He's like, well, he wouldn't do that. I'm like, but he's a kid. How come no one's talking about the grown adult getting in his face with like a stick and a drum? He's like, man, and he said this to me, and I'll never forget. He goes, man, because initially he started off with how he was feeling just bothered by what happened. He goes, this isn't helping me feel better right now. And I'm like,
maybe it's not about you.
Yeah, I was like, don't you want to know the whole story? Like, why would you just want to know? Because let's talk about something else. And I was like, wow. Like, I'm like, wow, we can't have a conversation. Like, it's just there. Like, you're just in that space. Like, can't be anything else. You can't put your son, you're 7. Remember when you were 17?
Yeah. Remember the stupid things you did?
Right? And then to be, whatever the situation is, to me, in my belief, outside of physically beating down some old homeless guy, that scenario for you put more onus on the adult. You have to. That's a kid. You teach him. You don't sit there and berate him. You don't sit there and plaster him everywhere and say he's the face of hatred in America. Like, what? It's a 17-year-old kid who was like, you could tell, like, he hasn't even, his whiskers weren't even coming in. His cheeks were getting red. You could see it. Like, what are we doing? Like, what? It just really bothered me that this is where we went as a country, that we were going to pile on top of a child.
Right.
Like, what? And any type of conversation with someone was like, I'm not comfortable with this anymore. And I'm like, oh, wow. Something.
I know this is a common phrase now. The first time I heard it was from Rogan when he talked about this phrase, ideologically captured.
Mm-hmm. That's unfortunately what happens.
What do you think that means? I mean, I know it speaks for itself, but.
I mean, it means that when people get into that, and I think it works in a few different ways, like,
it's cult-like. I mean,
it's very cult-like.
The word cult is often used as a 4-letter pejorative. People throw that word around far too often. They'll say things like Mormonism is a cult. It's like, no, I mean, tell me what a cult means. Because if all you're doing is disparaging religion by, give me a concrete definition. I think part of it is just a complete unwillingness to consider another view, to consider maybe all views as apart from your own, that differ from your own in any way evil, very insular, maybe having some kind of overlords that but you can't question.
Also, that part, it can't be questioned at all. Mm-hmm. That's what makes it a cult to me. Yeah. Because I love when people want to question Christianity. I'm like, let's go. I'm ready. I feel like I'm a lot more armed, armor of God on.
And you can consider other people's worldviews.
I consider in a place like this. I'm a little more, I would say, a lot more rigid now because I live in that secular darkness. I lived it hard. Yeah. I lived it hard.
But you could.
I can hear where they're coming from.
No, but here's what I'm saying. You could articulate their position, maybe even better than they could, which is a sign that you have kind of gotten inside of that worldview. Like I think I could probably do a good job explaining why I'm an atheist in a kind of acting sort of way. Yeah. Same thing with being maybe a Protestant who are obviously a lot closer to Catholics, or I could get inside the head in a way that I think the Protestant, atheist, Muslim, whoever could kind of respect that I'm trying to understand where they're coming from, even if they would correct me here and there. Yeah. Whereas I feel like maybe when you're ideologically captured, you're incapable of even doing that because the other person is just wholly evil.
Well, because that's it. That's it right there. Yeah. That's the difference. The difference is, and I did a post on this on X, I'm like, the difference that I've seen between Republicans and Democrats is that Republicans think Democrats are people with bad ideas. Democrats think Republicans are just bad people with ideas.
I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's true because I think that there's a lot of Republicans right now who are writing off Democrats as essentially possessed somehow.
Well, I'll tell you like this.
Let me just wrap it up by saying, like, obviously there are wicked ideas on both platforms. I voted for Trump. I was happy to vote for him. Thrilled that he got elected. Don't get me wrong. But I wouldn't say it's that clean cut. I've heard people say that before, but I can see Republicans. Let me put it this way. I can see the pendulum swinging. So you've been called evil and racist and Hitler for so long, and you've just done your best to try to navigate this space. I think we got to be on guard against now not falling into the same error we believe our Democratic friends have by then demonizing everybody on the other side.
I guess I'm going off my experience, and Hollywood is a extreme version of, because they're the propaganda arm of the Democratic
woke
Party.
On steroids. Yeah, so whatever woke I've experienced, probably nothing like what you've walked through. Yeah.
I mean, I heard one guy of that play I was doing that got canceled. He was talking to the director, gay man. And he goes, "Man, I'd love to punch a Nazi." And I'm just like, "What? Like, what are you talking about, dude?" I'm like, "This is the gay guy in the comfortable LA saying this stuff that if he was ever really around a Nazi and outnumbered, he wouldn't do anything." And that's the mentality. That's how they move like that. And again,
now that's a good point. I've never encountered. Yeah, this is like. You know how people talk about like living your truth and whatever the hell that means. But like you as a black man in America have an experience of America that I don't, like as an Australian immigrant white guy in America, right? Okay, well, let me give you my experience if we're supposed to be given our experiences.
Right.
I'm a conservative Christian. I run circles mostly with white conservative Christians. I have never once had somebody use the N-word in front of me in a disparaging way, like who speak badly about. That just has not happened to me.
I've been called nigger a lot, and it's mostly by black men. So as they're sitting there warning me that it may come out of your mouth, that's not where it came from, faithfully. It came from black guys.
And again, I'm not saying it doesn't happen. It's if you want to take my experience of meeting a lot of white conservative people, I haven't encountered white people who are like, "I hate black people," or anything remotely like. If anything, I feel like they bend over backwards way too
more
much.
Than they should.
Yeah,
seriously, I that's the thing I've experienced. I've got one time in college, I was half-assing a paper or a test. And it was like a history class. It was about like the Chinese dynasties or something from a certain time period. And I didn't want to take the time to remember the names. Because I was like, well, I'll give you the gist of what happened. Like this guy went to this guy, killed his mom, and now he runs it. And the teacher, who was a TA, bless you, the TA goes, he gives me a B. And I was like, "Great, I got a B. I'm out." He goes, "Yeah, I saw." He's like, "I see you're a football player. You're working hard, and I get what's going on in your life." And I was sitting there going, "Geez, this guy's just giving me a pass." All right, and just took it But that's ultimately the problem.
Yeah. What does this mean? The racism of low expectations?
Yeah, that's what that is.
Yeah.
Because it comes down to, based on, and then I have a name like Siaka Massaquoi. So it's like, based on that, life must inherently be hard for you. And so I believe, I know I did this. I believe kids will find opportunities to take advantage, and they will take it if the adult's going to give it to them.
If they're smart enough, they
right?
will.
Seriously, right? And so I used it. I was like, okay, this guy's going to give. I'm not going to say no. I'm going to see you later, right? But this is when I was really in the throes of it. And one of the reasons why I do say, and I think that this election will change that mentality, so we'll break through the cult-like atmosphere, which is Republicans are bad people with ideas, because that's where I was taught.
Yeah.
We were raised Republicans are bad. When I found out a certain person's dad was a Republican, I was like, it took me, I had to like breathe about it. Like, what is that? This guy, his father has been nice to everyone on the football team in high school for the whole time. This guy's senior year wore the exact same outfit all year, shorts and a t-shirt, leading up even to the coat, and didn't let his beard like cut because he was like, this is my thing for you guys. Like, I'm doing this all season.
And you found out he was a Republican
years later, and I was like, really?
But
and
he was kind,
like, but he was cool and nice, and his mom was. I remember they let us in the house, like all this stuff, bro. So like, I can understand where you're coming from when you say, well, we don't want to do that, but like at the same time,
this is where we are.
I've lived in thinking this and being supported with other people going, don't want to trust them.
I see.
So it's like, it sucks because I had to, when I started doing that Crest ORB job and I was traveling around the country, I was working with a lot more conservatives and Republicans. And that's what broke me out of it. Because we were initially just treating each other as people. And then when I find out after, I'm like, well, she's awesome. He's cool as all get out. Huh. Then I'd come back to Hollywood and I'd hear, then I'd go back out, go to like New York, go to Florida to work with them for 3 days and be like, wow, I just enjoy these people better than most of the people I'm just around in LA that's supposed to think the way I do.
Seem happier or?
They seem happier. They're more genuine.
Okay.
That's a big thing. Again, I think my experience is a little skewed because it's LA. LA is LA, San Francisco, parts of Chicago can be, but not too much. But being there in LA, I go back to LA and I'm around people who are like, man, these Republicans, they're trying to destroy everything and they're just so hateful and they're so this. And then I'd go back out, travel. It was a time, it would be like 4 or 5 times a year. I'd go once a month to go travel, come back to LA with the craziness, go back out and see normal people who are trying to just, just be and they were trying to understand.
I want to ask everyone who's watching right now, give us your take below. Is this what you've encountered? And I'd love to read these comments.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool.
I always come at this as a bit of an outsider.
Which is good though, because I think you can have an understanding of what I'm saying and still move the way you're moving, because that's important. Because I don't think there's anything wrong with knowing, hey, maybe that area you have to know it's a little more dangerous, but doesn't mean you change who you are because it's more dangerous. It just means that you're aware. That's all. And I think hopefully this is what this election and him winning the way he won can break through. So a lot of people on the left, a lot of people I've known on the left can go through what I went through. And I went through it, I think, the best way possible, where I had to work with people. We're being around, we're spending time, we're watching UFC fights together. We're having a great time. So I got to interact, not from, wow, I was just wrong. Because I think this election really shocked a lot of people about how wrong they were about where they were sitting.
At what point did you, because clearly you're out and out about this now.
Oh yeah, it's over.
So we've come a long way from the Skype, session where you're like looking down, don't look up. When did you look up? When did you start stating your views, and why did you do that?
So my friend and I were arguing back and forth whether people were standing up for the country or not. And I thought they were, because what I saw on YouTube. He thought they weren't because he was watching Alex Jones. He was like, it's all coming down. Alex is right. They're going to do it tomorrow. And so.
Is this your friend who went back to Nebraska?
Yeah. So he's like, I'm out of here, right? He took off with his boys. And so the next day he comes to me, he goes, hey, there's a recall table down in Long Beach. We can go down there and do a recall of Gavin Newsom, which was the largest recall of any governor in American history. So we went down there, And of course, there's predominantly Trump supporters. And there's this sweet little Filipino woman, Rachel, that just a fairy godmother. She was there, and we had Brian had put together like this list of Gavin Newsom's greatest hits. And so when people drove up and come to sign a petition, we'd give them that as well. So we were like, oh, we can help them out. Like, here you go. Let's see how bad it really is, right? You know? And so we were doing that, and it was really great. And somebody had a microphone, and Rachel was like, hey, do you want to get on the mic for a little bit? I was like, oh, okay. You know, and I'm just like, come on in, you know, and we're at the sheriff's office, and across the street was a Home Depot, big plaza. And I start to just go off because this stuff really hurts me inside because people are missing what's happening to them. You know, from the black community where fathers aren't around, and these single mothers are either they're killing their kid in their womb before it even come out, or we're killing each other on the street at such a high rate where our black population in America has been stagnant since the passing of Roe v. Wade, 13%. The only time a population is stagnant or drops is in a war. And that's been happening since that passed. And yet,
interesting.
And what was Margaret Sanger's reason to start Planned Parenthood was to eliminate the Negro race. But when you say that, it's like, no. And you're like, wow, we've really that lost that they're pushing more youth that come up down this path of death. And then they were like, Gavin released like all these prisoners back out into the society, like during, you know, after COVID and stuff like that, or before, during COVID, he was like, oh, that's safer to get them out of the jails. I'm like, wait a minute.
During the riots?
This was right before the riots.
Okay.
Right.
Sorry. Yeah.
So you're like, wait, what's going on? What are you doing? And I'm like, what do you think? And I remember getting on the mic and I go, and he just released, it was, I want to say it was like 250,000 prisoners. And he's like, he just released them. And where do you think they're going to go? They're not going to come to this neighborhood. They're going to the same poor black and brown neighborhoods you're saying you're supported, you know, politicians to help. What is that about? And I was just going off, and I was like, and it's like shaking. I had to put the mic down in a way, and I'm like, whoa.
Your grandfather preacher's coming through.
Oh man, God rest his soul, because I do think that God is preparing me for something like that.
Praise God.
You know, and it's like, and we can get into that later, but then we went to that. Then we went to Huntington Beach, to the pier, where on TV I would see Nazis on the beach, you know, skinheads are doing this. So we're like, oh, okay, it's going to be kind of crazy. So we get there, and there was like BLM and some people were debating. And so I've been watching Candace Owens and Charlie Kirk debate and do all that stuff. So I've been kind of ready to go. So we get up and we get in there, and then I start right in the middle. I'm right there in the middle of everyone, and you know, predominantly black folks, and they're like, what about this? What about that? And this one girl, she was talking, and I'm like, she's like, this town is predominantly white and they don't care about me. I go, have you ever went to any of the churches and asked for any help? She's like, no. Well, I'm like, well, there you go. I was like, why don't you go ask? You can't expect people just to look at you and go, I need to help this person. Like, that's what you're actually complaining about. Go ask, go find out if people aren't willing to help you before you sit there and espouse anything on top of them. Like, what do we do? What is this? We should be better than this. And then we started going to the Beverly Hills rallies, and that was amazing. So we went there. The first day there, it was like 100 people. And we ended up marching down Rodeo Drive, and there's all these European stores like Balenciaga, all this. And outside the stores were, I would say, best way I can describe them, were like more like Compton black people, where it's like that kind of very, like, I would say the cliche look, if you will, like the long eyelashes, the nails, the very gaudy look.
Okay.
It was a bunch of them lined up to go in these stores, and they were coming down and like, oh, Trump supporters, ha ha ha, laughing. And it just pissed me off. I go, you can sit here spending your money to white Europeans while we're killing each other like it's going out of style. Yeah, keep laughing. Let's see how much they care about that. Keep dropping your money over there and not putting it in your own community. What are we doing? And it just got me going. Where we walk down, I get to Wilshire, and I get around the corner. I'm like, I'm breathing because it's so much. And I don't know if you heard of this guy, MAGA Hulk, Stephen Davis. He's amazing. So he comes around the corner. He's like, yo, bro. He's like 6'2" black dude, like just big, right? Yeah. MAGA Hulk, right? And he's like, man, that was awesome. I'd ride with you any day. And so then we come back the other way, and I'm more confident. I'm like, yeah, you know, Joe Biden's want to say he didn't want a racial jungle. You know, that's what it is. Like, y'all know who you're voting for, right? And we get back to the park, And there was this one lady, and I was going to start interviewing people because I was like, let me interview people and put it up. And this beautiful blonde woman with the ring the size of maybe this cup, right? She's holding the sign saying, open the schools back up.
Okay.
And I go up like, hey, can you tell me, why are you here? What do you want to get out of this? She was like, I'm here because the schools are closed and I have money and my kids will be fine. Like I can have tutors come. They'll be okay. This is like those black and brown kids, like kids in the poor communities. They're going to fall. And she starts to cry. And I'm just like, whoa, it just hit me in a different way. I'm like, this is something else. Like people really give a damn. And this is what it looks like when they care, not the phony stuff that I was taught on the left to wait for the government to help you. People are out here doing this. She doesn't need to be here.
Right.
She literally, and she's the one that actually got me connected to Prayer U and all that stuff. And I'm like, that's the circle she's moving in. Why does she need to help me or even care to stand out there by herself, not with her husband and her kids, by herself with a sign saying, open the schools back up.
Yeah.
And so we started a page on Instagram. It was called Chief in the Americano because I still was kind of hiding in plain sight.
Right. Siaka meaning chief.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. There you go. An Americano meaning like, is that mixture of like coffee and water? I think it is. That makes
Americano.
Yeah, Americano. And since my boy is like half Mexican, half white.
Yeah,
so, so we started that page and we're doing stuff. And I was actually part of a group. We were working together. A few Africans were in this group. One African and a couple other like Americans, Black Americans. And there's a picture that somebody saw on a Facebook where it's literally me sitting with 4 other guys, a couple wearing MAGA hats, all black Puerto Ricans, one of the guys. And the next picture, me and Steven, 6'2" black dude, muscled with the Make America Great Again hat.
This is the Hulk guy?
This is the MAGA Hulk guy. And my friend sends me this girl that I've known who I stayed in my house, she's an African girl. We've been friends for a long time at this point. Helped her with her issues. She sends me a text and goes, hey, we got to remove you from the project because this is a pro-African project and we're pro-black in Africa. And so because of this, and sends the pictures that this gay black dude sent her, who he saw when he saw that on Instagram or on Facebook. He's like, here. So she literally sent me a thing where I'm in nothing but with pictures but black people.
Yeah.
And says, we got to remove you because you don't support the things that we support because we're pro-black here or pro-Africa. And I'm like, whoa, like this is crazy. I'm done. I was just done. I was like, this is wild. And the final straw that broke the camel's back was the Summer of Love.
Okay.
When, they're allowing people to destroy cities. My mom at the time was living in the south side of Chicago. In that area, they were it was like a war. It was a war zone. I mean, people were being killed 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon in broad daylight. I'll never forget a guy walking his daughter back home from school. And she was like in kindergarten. Guy walks up, boom, right in the back of the head.
Oh. Like,
this is on, you can video this. And the daughter's just sitting there holding his hand as he drops. And you're like, and at this time, Meghan Markle, your John Legend, all these actors are starting bailout funds for these people.
Kamala supported
that. And I'm sitting there watching this and and then my mom tells me, she's like, oh yeah, a 6-month-old was just shot around the corner from her place in the stroller middle of the day. And I said to myself, that's it, I'm done. I was like,
and see, honestly, the thing is, we're being told how peaceful and beautiful these protests were. It
was disgusting. And I'll be very candid. I was like, fuck this. I'm done. I'm sitting here hiding what I believe to be around these people. That's what I'm afraid of the judgment of these people who are okay with, if my mom is killed, that doesn't matter. That people that died in the middle of the street defending their own shops, black men and women, nothing. These people are bailing them out and saying that's what's right. I was like, I'm just done. I'm done. So I just started posting on my own page stuff that was going on because I was like, screw these people. Screw them. I was like, I didn't know what career was going to happen after that. I didn't care. I was like, this is something that's more important. So I'm going to just speak. For some reason, people liked how I put things together when I spoke. So I leaned more into that. I was using what God gave me with my acting skills. Rachel asked me to come down and make a speech. I made my first political speech in front of like 15 people. And this guy came up to me afterwards. He was a tall, heavy-set white dude, kind of looked like a trucker. He came up to me. He's like, hey, man, can I talk to you for a second? I was like, yeah, what's up? He's like, hey. He's like, yeah, I like what you said. Kind of, burly guy. He's like, I like what you said. And he's like, I have a friend of mine. He's black. And he goes, it's just so hard for me to talk to him. I just want to help him so much. I see what's going on. He starts to cry, man. And I'm like, these are the bad guys?
Yeah, this big white trucker.
These are the guys, that white woman with the ring on her. These are the bad people. Not the ones who were bailing out these criminals that were killing kids. Kids. But the ones who were sitting there just because of their skin color, they're inherently bad. What? I was so done, Matt. Like I was just so done. And I was like, all right, whatever we need to do.
When you say done, you mean done?
Caring about hiding for this industry, for the Hollywood industry. Gotcha. Caring about like, oh my goodness, somebody's going to say something. And I'll tell you this, when I started to be more vocal, the ones that came at me first were black people. Does he know? Look at him being a coon. Look at his house nigga. Oh, does he know that he's African?
What do those words mean?
Coon meaning like raccoon, like you're trying to, it's an old pejorative that was used back in the day.
Is it? But why do they? I don't understand what that means. Does it mean you're siding with the oppressor? Is that the idea?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, you're cooning around trying to play a part.
Oh, I see.
House nigga, same thing. Like you got accepted in the house, so now you're gonna say whatever they want you to say, which is funny because what they don't understand is that's what's happening actually on the left.
Right.
It's like if you say anything different as a black man, you're done. It's a wrap. You got nothing to say. When Obama came out and tried to say black men need to be fathers, Jesse Jackson was calling a hot mic saying this nigga's trying to tell us what to do. And you're like, no, we need to do that. I'm an example of how like it can be troublesome. I didn't, thank God I had the mom I had and the support because I didn't go down the gang road. But like, it's like there's so many things that I know that I'm missing because I didn't have a father around that outside of death or the government taking me away from my son, I'm going to be there for him for everything. And so, I was done. I was over it. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know. I just knew let's get out there and fight. They're trying. I just knew they're trying to move in a way that was going to squeeze us. That was not natural. It wasn't right. So I got involved in all that pushback against what the government was doing. And my agent dropped me through an email from...
what did he say?
He didn't actually... It was through an Actors Access. You have an automated email where it's like, oh, hey, you're rep by so-and-so now. Or so-and-so is no longer your rep. That's how I got it. No personal conversation.
Did you have his number? Did you...
Oh, yeah, I had all that stuff.
Did you follow up with him?
No, because I was like... But these are the people. This is what I knew they were going to be like. My manager, who was a black lesbian lady, she was kind enough to put something together in an email, which was like, oh, we're downsizing. And so we're going for just picking a few clients. And I'm like, and I knew what it was really about because before 2020, literally I had two commercials running at the same time nationally. I was booking TV shows like it was nothing. And she was like, I've never seen anyone move like this quickly.
Now she's dropping.
And all of a sudden it was like, oh, we're downsizing. And so I'm like, I get it. And I was like, to me, I'm like, I get you can't really say what you want to say. It's fine. I'm not trying to fight you on this because I don't care what these people think anymore.
Okay, so I understand now. So when you're passionately saying I'm done, what you mean is I have to be honest, even if it destroys everything I'm working toward and hope for.
Because I was like, I didn't want to work towards it in this way. And I had no idea. Because the only thing I had done to make money in my life was bartend and act.
Yeah.
So I didn't know. I was like, I don't know. But I do know I got to say something. And I have seen people come up to me and it moves them in a way where it seemed like it gave them encouragement in their space. So I'm like, this felt like more of a calling to keep going and keep being loud and bold with, with my words. And in those Beverly Hills rallies.
See, what you did is courageous. Like that's courageous. When you speak in a way where you're going to lose everything, including friends, and people are going to say things about you, that's courageous. It's not courageous to say something that Hollywood, big tech, the government, and universities all celebrate.
Yeah.
That's actually not terribly courageous, I don't think.
It was... I mean, thank you for saying that. It was more just... the best way I can describe it was a pull in my heart. Like I had to do this. I've seen people moved, and I'm like, I always felt like I would be fine. I always felt like I don't know what I'll do, but I'll be fine. Like I feel like I'm capable, like personable. I can talk to anyone. I've been able to get jobs, you know, doing a bunch of this. So like eventually I would be fine. But I saw how it was affecting other people who couldn't really speak a certain way, couldn't really move in a certain way. So I'm like, yeah, man, dude, you're not what they say you are, bro. You know, it's okay. Stand up for it.
Yeah.
Love God. It's okay. And in those rallies, a lot of pastors started being around. So I started seeing the strong Christian, where I grew up with the hippie Jesus who was like, oh man, you know, just kind of sit back. We're good. Don't worry about it. Hey, turn the other cheek. And it's always, and I'm like, yeah, I'm all right. You know, like there's sometimes I always felt like you got to stand up for something. And I didn't see that with the people of faith that I grew up with before.
Yeah.
And I started seeing these pastors, these fiery pastors. And I was like, whoa, wait, this is okay. I know God exists because he saved my life, but this is the God you've been talking about? And with AA, I saw in one of the rooms I used to go to, they started requiring vaccine paperwork and masks. And I'm like, I know how hard it was to walk in a room being hopeless.
Yeah.
Now you're going to give somebody an excuse not to go in there? Because all somebody has to do is go, oh, no. See, I knew this wasn't right for me. Let me go get that six-pack again, which could be their last six-pack they ever have. That's how dangerous alcoholism is and how easily it's looking for an out. And so when they start doing that, I was like, okay, I'm done with the program. It can move in such a way that when something comes like this, people will start to shift into their bad behavior. But I knew that Bill W., he was a Catholic. And so they would say, you know, the original manuscript had a bunch statement, God, 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 God. He took a lot of it out to, appease like the Muslim and the atheist, right? And so I was like, okay, so if the impetus of this book was Christianity, let me go see what this is about. Especially after now seeing those fiery pastors like really step up.
Now, at this point, you are unemployed in LA?
Yeah, I was living off, unemployment. Yeah, I was just like, all right, let's do it. And 2020, they're paying you to stay at home. And this one time, you know, Jack Hibbs. Have you heard of Jack Hibbs? He's you should get him on the show too. Man, I'll get you a list.
All right.
You got to reach out to. So Jack was having Charlie Kirk show up there, and my buddy Brian was like, hey, we're planning to go see him. And that morning, Brian's like, oh, hey, there's this other church called Godspeak, and I guess the sheriffs are ticketing them because they stayed open. Because this is when, you know, California was like, you know, you can't, everything closed except for strip clubs, weed shops, and alcohol. like your churches and synagogues, they have to close down, but you can go look at, you know, some girls dancing.
I thought you were being hyperbolic.
No,
strip clubs were left open.
Yeah. Oh yeah, strip clubs, weed shops, and alcohol and liquor stores.
The pit of hell.
Yeah, and you
can't worship Christ.
You can't. They would ask people not to sing before they shut down churches. Like, you probably shouldn't sing in church. Everything the devil wants us to do, you know, he doesn't want us to worship. He doesn't want us to be around each other.
Yeah, but he's okay with strip clubs.
Of course,
he's okay with weed. Yeah,
and
he's okay
alcohol.
with you killing yourself.
And so. And Gavinism is a special type of evil.
What was the justification for leaving strip clubs open? Do you know?
It was a business. They didn't want these people to lose their jobs.
Golly.
Yeah, these women, they also passed a law there. It was, I think, in 21 where they decriminalized basically being a hooker. Because they're like, disproportionately black and brown, da-da-da-da-da. They always use black and brown as a cover to bring in their debauchery. Always. Like, it's really, when you ended up running for office, so I had to get into like really paying attention to that. And I started seeing, wait a minute. Every time you guys want to do something gross, like kill more babies, you'd say black and brown. When you want to accept like debauchery in your neighborhoods, you go black and brown. Like, what's wrong with you guys? And so,
talk about the racism of low expectations. The black and brown people, they need the stripping.
They need the stripper.
To prostitute themselves and to kill their children.
They got to kill them. And then they go to jail disproportionately because they're crackheads, and those crackheads tend to be more black and brown, and they kill their babies, and they shouldn't be in jail for that. What? So just let the community continue to devolve. That's fine. But then it keeps them in control. That's the whole plan. If you don't have the spirit in you working, then it's like, yo, anything can come in. And so Brian came up to me and was like, hey, you know, this church, Godspeak, is going through this. He's like, but they may give out tickets. And mind you, like you just said, unemployed. I was like, oh man, I don't know if I can. how much are the tickets? And he's like, maybe like $50, $100. I was like, oh, okay. And I said to myself in my head, I go, well, I don't want to do it. And I turned to him, I go, which church do you think Jesus would go to? He goes, I'll go to the church being persecuted. And I was like, damn it. I'm like, all right, let's go. So we go to this church. And this is when I got my first Bible that I still have to this day, all in there. And I go to this church, and now at this point I've been really good with debating in the streets. So there's some protesters, and I was like, I'm going back and forth. My friends go, okay, we're going inside for the service. I'm like, okay. And then I kind of do a little more before I go in. I start going in, and I'm walking around the backside, and I kind of don't really know where I'm going. And I turn behind, there's this older white lady, and I go, hey, do you know where we're going? She's like, oh, I'm following you. I'm like, uh-oh. We're both screwed now, right? So we end up going, we get in, and
blind leading the blind.
Blind leading the blind, right? And inside the actual inside the church itself, where the pews are, that was all filled up. So they had actually opened up their lobby and they made it like seats there. So my friends were there, and I was like, hey, are you with anyone? She goes, no, God told me, I'm from Arizona. God told me this morning I needed to come and support this church, that he needed me here for a reason. I was like, oh, wow. Okay, well, you can sit with us. Yeah. So the sermon goes on, beautiful sermon that I can't remember right now, but it was beautiful because Pastor Rob is like, he gets you going. At one point we had 13 people run in our church run for local office. Mm-hmm. That's how active that he gets people. That he helps us anyway. After the service, the lady, she goes, God wanted me to share this with you. She goes, open your book to Ephesians 5:6. Right? I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Sorry, Ephesians 6:10. And I open it up, and she's like, do you know the armor of God? I was like, well, I've heard of it. Yeah. But she goes, and she opens in her book. Now her book was all written, everything was written. And she gets her pen, and she reaches over to my Bible, and was about to do it, stops herself, and it circles it 3 times in her. She goes, God told me that you're going to need this. Let's read this. We read it together. She goes, God keeps telling me you're going to need this. You're going to need this. Mm-hmm. And just to kind of to shrink in everything that then came right after. So she gave me that. It was in August. I found out in March of the next year, that on September 17th, I was put on the Secretary of State's censorship list for social media. That February, so that's one. That February was, I get a $300 citation I was doing in West Hollywood. I was doing a recall table in the middle of a grassed area away from the sidewalk, but because they just passed a mask ordinance, they gave me a citation for not wearing masks, $300. Then June 10th, which we will get into, was when I was raided for January 6th. And all in that time, I remember thinking, I was like, whoa, that lady said, I'm going to need this. And she started off, when I first met her, goes, God told me to come here for some reason. I don't know what. And I'm like, it just, poof. It's also told me why. I was like, I'm taken care of. God's got me. God's got me. I was like, I don't know anything else, but I know God's got me. And so that was one of the big turnarounds, where I didn't start going to church right away then. It wasn't until after I met my now wife, Charlotte.
Who's lovely, by the way. She's so delightful.
She's sweet. She's the best. Yeah. She's the best. She just came on and started riding right away. It was like she had my back. Like coming in the first time we actually ever met was a UFC fight night.
Okay.
and September 25th of 2021. And we're talking a little bit online, and she started following me on Instagram, and she followed my Chief Americano page, with Brian and I both share. And I told her, I go, hey, come over to my private page so we don't cross streams, And I had done a live with a lawyer and a friend of mine talking about what is done in the legislative body. They will do something called a gut and amend bill. So 3 months earlier, they'll go, hey, save the puppy bill. You go, that sounds good. 3 months when you come back to vote on it, they had taken everything out about Save the Puppy, and they put something else in it. So what you do, because you're busy, you go, oh, yeah, I remember that Save the Puppy bill. Yeah, cool, we're fine. So this was a telecommunications bill, which then they gutted and put in COVID restrictions, where if you didn't have the jab, you could not even go into you couldn't go into a gas station with a covering. Even if the gas station is open air, but as a covering, if you don't have the shot, you couldn't go. Like, that's what they wanted to pass. So we did a little live about that. And that evening I told Charlotte to come to my page. The next day, Instagram removed my account. So if I didn't tell her to go, I probably wouldn't know, because I don't remember. Everyone's screen name something crazy, you know, like up, down, dog, left, 68. And you're like, what does that mean? Your name's Aaron, you know? So she comes over and they took it down. I was like, wow, they took it down. Her and I are just kind of flirting back and forth. And one time I asked her, I was like, hey, what are you doing this weekend? She was like, oh, I'm going to a Bible study dinner. I was like, oh. I like it already.
Bible studies.
Yeah, right.
I like dinners.
Well, close. She actually flipped it on me. I was like, oh, that's cool. She goes, what are you doing? And that's one thing I could tell if a girl's even worth talking to in LA. Yeah. Because she'll ask her the question back to you. A lot of times where you'd be like, so how old are you? She goes, oh, I'm 22. And you go, okay, you don't care how old I am. All right. You know, but where she was coming back, I'm like, it's such a low bar in LA for that, where it's like, you just asked me a question back. Okay, I like you. And so she goes, what are you doing? I was like, oh, you know, I'm having some friends over watching UFC. She goes, I like fights. I was like, oh. And so that weekend was, I was like, well, you're free to come over after if you want. You know, fights go till about 9:30. And there was this fighter on there who's like one of my favorite fighters of all time, Valentina Shevchenko. She's a Polish fighter. A little short blonde, literally the same exact dimensions as Charlotte. And she's like, but at the end of every fight, she dances, and Charlotte's a trained dancer. So I'm like, oh, you're going to love it. You know, there's just, and Charlotte started doing like stunt work. So she's doing flips and stuff. And I seen her on Instagram. So, and she's doing dance. I'm like, you're going to love this. What she's this, she's that, you're going to love her. And she's like, okay. So that evening, she hit me up when she was leaving. She's like, I'll leave. I should be over like 45 minutes. I was like, okay. When she gets to my house and she's like, I'm here, I'll be walking up the driveway. She starts walking up the driveway at the same time Valentina is walking in towards like up the, you know, the walkway to the ring. And I'm like, okay, that's okay. So I go open the door, and I have at the house I had a motion light. So she's walking up, the light hits her, and she's just like, it's just bright, like a bright angel. And I'm just like, in my head, I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, oh damn it. But you know, I'm pretty good at poker, so I'm like, hey. Yeah. She's like, hi. She has like caramel apple, which was a whole nother thing, because I'm like, she brought some caramel apples, and I'm thinking, Eve? No. Exactly. So she's like, do you like caramel apples? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, hurry up, the fight's starting. Get in here. She's like, okay. And I'm like, and she comes and she's walking by. I'm like, wait, first you gotta give me a hug. She's like, give me a hug. I'm like, oh, damn it.
You smell like strawberries.
Yeah. Actually, her name online is Strawberry. So it's like, so she goes, she gives me a hug, and I'm like, oh, damn it. I'm like, get in the house. And she's like, okay. And so we go, and it's my best friend, Brian, another buddy of mine, Phil, and her and myself. It's actually only 4 of us, and we're watching the fights. And I remember we talked earlier, and I had started playing the guitar, learning to play the guitar. And we were joking. I was like, well, you know, I could play you a song. She's like, I'd love that, you know, all that. So we're watching the fights. Valentina wins, just in case anyone was wondering. Valentina wins. Good night. And of course, I'm coming over behind her close. I'm like, well, that's called a Kimura. You know, that right there, that'll knock anyone out, like in her ear. She's like, oh, really? You know,
turns out she hates UFC.
No. She loves it now. Like we watched, we sat down, we saw the John Jones fight. It's like a whole thing. But yeah, then after everyone else left, we went and like I played music. We ended up hanging out, playing music. I'm playing music and I'm singing for someone for the first time, doing guitar and singing. So it was the first time I did that, and it's like comfortable. And she's like a little fairy dancing around, you know. And she gets to my bongos. She's playing. We're talking. She leaves at like 4 a.m. I'm like, whoa, you know, this was amazing. And I remember she told me, I was like, God, this is the first time I ever sang and played in front of film. She's like, really? She's like, it was just like natural. I'm like, whoa. Like she just kind of, it was just comfortable. It was right, you know. And she was driving an hour back to go stay where she was staying, so I stayed up to wait till she got home, and she called me, and within 30 days I asked her to marry me.
Good man.
You know, I was like, and this is the difference between men and women. I think it's funny. So like a woman, you can be like, can you marry me? Here's a ring. Oh my God, right? So I didn't have a ring or anything at the time. And we were actually going to go see a Christian brother of ours. He was doing a performance where he was singing and stuff at this spot. So we're on Sunset Boulevard. We just got like some meatballs, some fried mushrooms, and like I think a slice or two of pizza at the spot right around the corner. And we're sitting in this outside alcove where it just has some chairs, and we're right there on Sunset Boulevard waiting to go in. And I'm looking at her, and I was like, hey, will you marry me? She looked at me. She goes, really? I go, yeah. She goes, yeah. I go, shake on it. Because
so
as a man, this means that it's like, so she shook my hand. I was like, she shook, to me, that was the beautiful part. Like I asked her, that was the beautiful part for her. For me, I was like, she shook my hand, And so, we she said yes. And we're like, okay, so we're going to do this thing, right?
Now, did she have any questions about, is this going too quick? Are you sure you mean this? None of that. She knew you were serious.
I was dead serious. Like, I think one thing she gleaned from me when we first, because also seeing what I was doing and being very like, boom, like this is just what it is. This is matter of facts. Like this, let's stand bold for what we believe in. She knew if I was saying this, I wasn't playing around, and I wasn't, and it had a great night. And the funny thing is, when I decided to run for office, because I used to tell people, if you're sick of seeing what's going on, you get involved.
Like, then, are you involved?
Yeah, I was like, what? And so this one person hit me up, and they were like, yeah, thanks you for what you say, and I'm running for mayor of my town. It's small, but thank you. I was like, whoa. It started hitting me. People started sending me messages like that, and I just was like, man, I can't not do something like that. How can I tell other people to go do something that I'm not willing to do and just say, oh, I'm just an actor, So the seat was up, the assembly district seat was up. There was no one else running against a Democrat. And I was like, look, at the very least, I can get the message of conservatism around this area and that's something I've noticed. When people say an area is too blue to try, they're part of the problem, because it's about investing into people, and it's not just going to be man, they're cutting kids up, they're crazy, right? And everyone goes, yeah, oh, you're right, because if that was the case, most people wouldn't vote Democrat again, but that's not the case, right? So it's about getting the message in there and investing in getting the message in. So I was like, at the very least, I'm going around my neighborhood, my area, I'll be able to do that. And so she was like, I'll help you. So now, like, one of the first big things we're doing together is running a campaign.
Wow.
As my fiance. And I was like, you know where we need to go? We need to start going to churches, because churches, take the Hollywood model. Churches are PG-13 movies. Whereas if you go to a dinner, you go to any type of evening event for, donors, that's like a rated R movie. You're only going to see the adults. But if you go to a church, it's PG-13, where mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, aunt, cousins, little ones, old ones, everyone goes there. The whole family shows up. So that's why I'm like, we should go to churches. So I started going to churches, or we started going to churches. And within that, people would see us like, oh, that's your wife. Oh, no, fiance. Like, oh, you guys, no, we live together. They go, oh. Uh-huh. And I'm like, yeah. And after about like the fifth time of people going, oh, you're living together and you're not married. And we're like, yeah. And I was working on Book of Ephesians with a pastor. And and he challenged me. He goes, I know you guys live together. I know money's an issue, but you have a big house, a big enough house. Like, maybe you guys have a challenge. Maybe you guys shouldn't be sleeping in the same bed anymore. Mm-hmm. And so for the last 6 months of before we got married, we ended up sleeping in different rooms.
Good man.
And we slipped up once, to be honest. We did slip up once. But we ended up, it was such
Which is actually a great argument for not even living in the same house as a beautiful woman who you're about to marry.
Trust me. And who's like you love and everything's fun and everything's just like, just don't. No. If you want to, I feel like we saw his gifts based on that. I mean, the house we got married in is a place that would cost most people $20,000. It was her, one of her Christian mentors that gave it to us for free. Her uncles are live musicians, trumpet and sax, and they played for us coming down. The dress was super taken care of, reasonable. The food was reasonable. Like the type of wedding we had for the cost we put down, it was like we didn't have the money to pay for what people saw, but yet it was just provided. He was providing for us. But what we did was December of that year, because we told everyone April 23rd of 2023, right? That's when we're going to get married. But December of 22, my mom was coming in town for Christmas, and I go, Mom, bring a nice dress. I was like, let's just get married. Because I also saw her kind of getting caught up in the party of the wedding. And I don't really care. Like, I want to marry you.
It's about marriage, not
wedding.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, let's just get married. So we went to, so she told her mom that's what she was going to do. I told my mom, and we told Pastor Jesse Bailey, great guy too, you should have him on the show. And we ended up going to Forest Lawn, which is a cemetery, a very famous cemetery in Los Angeles, but it also has chapels there. And they have the Declaration of Independence chapel. So we ended up getting married right in front of the Declaration of Independence. It was such a beautiful thing. It was her, myself, the pastor, our her mom's boyfriend, and then our photographer friends, 2 people. And that was it. And we just did a nice little ceremony. We didn't book it. We just showed up and we were like, all right, let's go. Yes. We wrote our vows, which are great and all that stuff. And so we technically got married in December of 22.
Okay.
And, then did the celebration in April of 23, which is just amazing. And family was there, but I definitely saw that we were in a stronger bond and a stronger place after we got married that I'd never experienced in all the relationships that I was so hopelessly in love in. And I love you and we love it and love. Why are you breaking up? Why am I breaking? No, because it wasn't real. It was all based on that that lust love that the society pushes on us. You feel good about it? Well, then go. It doesn't matter if you're not really like her personality or you don't really, attracted to her completely. No, just that's there. And also it was like the fear of not having enough. So I would hold on to relationships longer than I should have, because if I break up with her, I don't know if anyone will like me and, all that.
Yeah.
So it was
no longer about you. It's about this woman who you have promised to protect and love until she breathes her last, or you do. And
that's what I want to do. And it's so funny because when we started reading the Bible together in 22, and I actually recommend this to any couples out there. If you have separately, that's great, but you can read it together. And what we did was we go 1 through 10, then she go 11 to 20, and we'd go back and forth that way. So that way it wasn't just line by line switching off. It gives one person a chance to sit there and digest it, and another person to really get the words out and then flip. And it took us 1.5 years to get through the New Testament. It was just amazing.
Beautiful.
To do that. So I recommend anyone out there, if you have a relationship you want to start, and if you're a Christian and they're a Christian, do that. Why not? And then you get a chance to really hear where they are about it, not just know they're a Christian so that you assume they think this way about, Christ and about different situations. No, you get a chance to really bounce it off each other and go, okay, this is, or this isn't, So it was a very cool thing. She was there for my baptism in January 1st of 2021 or 2022. And she's been, and she was going to that church, Godspeak, and I didn't know. So the church that I went to go support and all this stuff that happened, then when I found her, she goes, "You want to go to church with me?" I was like, "Yeah, where do you go?" She goes, "Godspeak in Thousand Oaks." I'm like, "Wait, what?" Okay, what's going on here, Lord? You're just, it's amazing.
Josiah, would you mind turning that fan around the other way? Thank you. Oh, well, glory to Jesus Christ. He's so good. Yeah. Yeah.
It's beyond that what we deserve.
Yeah. I had this idea that, you know how if you ever stayed out all night, partying or something.
Plenty of times.
The neon lights. What's that? What do you want? Oh, yeah. The neon lights lose their cheer as the sun begins to rise.
Yeah.
And so too do earthly pleasures as Christ becomes more prominent in your life. And you realize that those things that were drawing me, that were promising me what they could never give, now look dull and dated as the real thing rises.
And I actually think it starts happening before you really get to Christ. Because when I was drinking, before I even knew God in that way, there were times I go to the bar to work and there'll be different types of alcohol, and I'd do eeny, meeny, miny, mo, because I was so bored of drinking, but I didn't know what else to do to get through this shift. You're like, all right, here we go. Okay, I guess rum tonight. So I think it starts to happen before you actually really engage, or at least for me.
Well, it's cynicism, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then what's the point? It's all old and stale, and this is life now.
And often I think that's, sometimes it's not that Christianity's too difficult to believe. It's too good to believe.
Yeah,
because when you've been chasing 1,000 little gods and all of them have not just let you down, but have left you worse than when you approach them, all of a sudden someone comes here with a message of the gospel. That cynicism is so embedded within us that we're tempted to think, how could this possibly be true?
Cynicism, but also that level of disobedience. Because, it says in Proverbs that knowledge of him is written on our heart, right?
Yeah.
And that was something that I knew if I really was going to take this seriously, there are things I couldn't do anymore. And I'm like, I don't want to be told what to do.
Have you ever read Augustine's Confessions? You should.
No.
You really,
there
really...
we go. You get Rob McCoy on here. I'm going to read. I'm going to read the book.
Man.
Yeah, I'm going to definitely
because
check it out.
he lived a life of great sin. He had a child out of wedlock. He would go to gladiator games. And it was this. He knew he had to come to Christ, but he talked about these old sins would pull at him and speak to him like, "Really, you're going to give us up completely?"
Yeah,
and he had to finally make that sever.
Yeah. It's tough, man.
Yeah.
It is tough because there's certain things. Sorry, I didn't talk to Mike. There's certain things that became part of your adult life, and we talked about it earlier, but like alcohol, like you said, it smells on top of you and all this, but some of the other vices, they're hidden, and you're like, well, it's not really hurting anyone outwardly, right? So I can kind of just mess around in here, but it's like, thank God for Jesus, thank Jesus for Jesus.
Amen. Listen to this from Augustine. Late have I loved you, O beauty ever ancient, ever new. Late have I loved you. You were within me, but I was outside. And it was there that I searched for you in my unloveliness. I plunged into lovely things which you created. You were with me, but I was not with you. Created things kept me from you. Yet if they had not yet been in you, they would have not been at all. You called, you shouted and broke through my deafness. You flashed, you shone, and you dispelled my blindness. You breathed your fragrance on me. I drew in breath, and now I pant for you. I have tasted you, now I hunger and thirst for more. You touched me, and I burned for your peace. Amen?
Amen. That's it. That is like, that's, yeah. I just think about that. I think about drinking. I think about drinking and womanizing. It was like, that was a worldly pleasures that had me feeling full for those moments. And, but yet it was empty in the long run, completely. So the man, we need to be, as Christians, we need to know our history. And just like I've been learning about the history about my family and my namesake, King Siaka Massaquoi, who started Liberia. Like,
come on.
We start to learn about our namesake, we can defend it in the square that much more. We can not just defend it in the square, but we can defend it at home, where it's, if a kid comes home and says, I think I'm a boy, and they're a girl, or vice versa, or I think I'm gay, or whatever it is. If they don't have the knowledge of Christ, they don't have the knowledge of God, the God of the Bible, it's easy for them to fall for the pleasures of the world, because it's the pleasure of the world. They put so much money and effort.
To use a crass analogy, it's like the food industry in America. When you go to a grocery store, the boring things are like, the chicken breasts and the steak and the watermelons, but you get to the checkout lane, that's where all the shiny poison food is. Yeah. Right?
It's only 99 cents.
Yeah. And it appeals to our passions. It's like this quick fix. Give it to me now.
Reese's peanut butter cups.
Yeah,
that's one of my
nerd
vices. Oh,
that used to be mine. Yeah, but you look at the ingredients, like, oh, this isn't food.
Yeah, you're like, what? Like, I'm good. I had a friend of mine saying his brother worked for the chemists at Arby's, and they said he can make a plank of wood taste like steak. I was like, oh, geez. I was like, we got to stay away from all that. But it's
glory to God. I'm so thrilled that you've come to know Christ and that you love him and that you have a beautiful bride and a beautiful son. How good is the
Xavier,
Lord?
yeah, he's so good. He blessed us with another one.
Did he?
Yeah,
congratulations.
thank you. We're gonna
don't stop.
Irish twins. Yeah, and it's interesting. I think I told you earlier, I was baptized when I was like 8, and it just happened. And when I look back, I was thinking about this last night, getting ready to come here, and I look back at my life, and there's so many moments where I should be dead or in jail, or in having a kid with a woman that I shouldn't be. Yet Christ was protecting me all those times to get to this place where I've been in situations where I've had 2 abortions.
You have paid for a girl.
I paid for one, and then one girl, I didn't know she did it, but I found out after. And
brother.
And I think about those kids. Thank you, because I think about those kids now. And I hit a point, and Pastor Rob told me this. He goes, And he goes, he says he forgets your sins as far from the east from the west, and that he's forgiven you. And I've always wanted a boy. Of course, I always wanted a son. And I always said I would name my first son Xavier. And I got to a place before I met Charlotte that I was okay with never having a family like that, because I was like, I accepted what I did, probably spat in God's face. And I just seen like he gave me a son. And 30 days after Xavier was born, a name that I had ever since I was 10 years old, that I was going to name my first son Xavier. I get the job offer with Daily Wire, and we're able to buy a home. And Xavier means new house. Mm. And I'm looking back at 10 years old me holding on to this name all the way to this point, and I'm like, God knew. He knew. Even when I was like, I get it. Anytime I've ever got arrested, I'm like, oh, you got me. Not like, no, I didn't do it. Unless except for the J6 stuff, which was like, wait, what are you guys doing? But everything else was like, yeah, you got me. And I accepted that. But I do think about that. Both kids. One would be at least 22 now, and I've always loved kids. Love my godsons to death, and first job was babysitting. And the fact that he's given me this child and now another one on the way, I don't deserve it.
No, you don't.
And it's just...
But it's almost like that's not the point.
That's not the point, yeah.
Isn't that wild?
Which blows my mind. I was like, I didn't earn this.
Yeah, I'm the same thing. I'm like, I'm a wretch. Yeah. I'm an absolute wretch.
Terrible.
And it's like our blessed Lord's like, I was aware of this. That's why. I also love you deeper than your wretchedness.
Yeah. Which is, it's that part of me I still... I don't quite understand, but I get it, if that makes sense. I don't understand how he can still, but I get that he does, because that's what he said he's going to do. So so that's one of the things that I find that is at least a saving grace, that he's made me in a way where it's like, well, if he said it, and he said it. Whether I understand that how it works, that's one thing I started throwing away. I don't need to understand how it works. Right. He said it, so I'll trust him. Yeah. And when the more I've trusted him, the more the things that in a life that I've always looked to live is come true. And it's like, wow, okay, working with Daily Wire, that's cool. I used to watch these guys from a distance. Now I'm like in the house and in a house and in a beautiful neighborhood with my son, who's just flourishing. And now we have another kid on the way. And I was going to name the first son. I'd named first son Xavier, and I was always going to name the second son Logan. Now, full disclosure, it's because I've been a big X-Men fan my whole life.
But I gave my wife a much more spiritual reason, and she bought it.
No, I told her the truth. Okay. She was like, oh, okay, it's cool. She actually said like this. We went and saw the Deadpool Wolverine movie, which is, it's extremely godless. But the Wolverine portion of it was Wolverine. And we were leaving the theater. She looked at me and she goes, I see why you want to name your kid Logan. I was like, you get it. You get me. So we'll see. We think she had a dream it was a girl, and then she was pregnant, woke up the next day and took a pregnancy test, and it was positive. So it's probably going to be a girl. But if it is a boy, Logan.
And so you've moved to Nashville within the last year?
We moved to Nashville September. Okay. Yeah.
And what was your thought? Was that the first time you watched Am I Racist with me at the theater?
Yeah.
Or did you see it?
Yeah, no, that was the first time. Yeah. So that was like...
I mean, what's that like? Because it seemed like you were cluing into this stuff. You were being red-pilled, if you want, on this stuff before you realized that this could ever, I don't know, get traction. What was your impression of the film?
The film was about time, and that it especially the way Daily Wire did it, and Matt Walsh, man, if no one's seen it, his performance in that as an actor.
Yeah. I watched him. That's interesting. As an actor, what did you think?
Oh, I was like, this guy is a superstar now. I was like, he just did the work that he did as an actor. He just took it to the next level. I'm like, this is the kind of thing we need. We need to build our own superstars. We need to build our own celebrities, because we can't rely on the godless to maybe do things that we want to see anymore. And the fact that Matt and Daily Wire was able to pull that off and make solid money at the box office over a documentary, I'm watching this, and it was brilliantly done when it comes down to what it was, and talking to normal people as well as the kind of far fringes of society. And Matt's work in that. And I remember I went up to Matt afterwards. I go, dude, great work. I was like, seriously, you just took your star to the next level. But that was the work you did there. Watching as an actor, I was like, there's moments where, and as I always do this when an actor moves me, I lean in because I'm like, I'm starting to see where did you get. Where was your motivation and what work were you doing? And sometimes I've been in a place where I can kind of spot it, you know, and see where it's like, oh, there's the your motivation in there, right? There's your movement, and I'm like, okay, I see what you're doing. Okay, nice. Like it was done very, very well. It was done very well, and I think that anyone should see it because it pulls down the weight of. Yeah, because what I've noticed is a lot of white folks on the left that are like, I'm anti-racist. Like they're afraid to even maybe be seen as possibly anything wrong with that, and so they kind of mute themselves of who they really are. And this movie allows people to see the ridiculousness of it. That it goes, wait a minute, I shouldn't. Like I need to start to know who I really am. I'm not this person. Who am I? Right, and start to move in that direction, and not to be told by some lady who's writing some book in colleges that just making a bunch of money on it. You know, Beverly.
I was gripping. You were in front of us. You and your bride were in front of my wife. Yeah. I was gripping her arm. I couldn't handle the levels of secondhand embarrassment.
Oh, when
he's getting Robin DiAngelo.
Oh, that was great.
To pay reparations.
That was so great, because to me, but I was also looking at it from this angle.
Golly.
These people are part of what is destroyed Americanism in this country. And Americanism, I say, it's like somebody like my mom can come to this country, get, you know, all the paper rights. Now she's a naturalized citizen, and she's an American that has the same DNA as as Abraham Lincoln, those who fought in the Civil War, those who fought in the Revolutionary War, because that's the promise of this country. Once you're an American, you are part of all that story. And that story is great. And that's the thing that people want to hate. That's why they come after this country so much, because it is different than any other country that comes off of a monarchy system, and they still look to man as something to worship. And a lot of people don't understand, as Christians, at least for me, we don't worship Donald Trump. We worship the Lord Jesus Christ. Trump is just an avenue that can be used to get what we need as Christ lovers more out there. That's all. Give us more space. It's not they go, oh, you worship him, and it hit me why they say that. I go, oh, well, you say that because on the left you don't worship a God. You don't worship God, I should say. They worship man. They wait. Oh, Obama. Okay. You know, this Clinton. No, Joe. They worship man. So for them, when they see us move with this passion, they think, oh, you worship Trump, because that's their only understanding. Most of them don't have the God of the Bible to go, what it feels like to worship something bigger than man. And so I noticed, I was like, oh, that's why they always kind of say, well, you're God Trump. I'm like, dude, are you crazy? Like, no, not at all. Trump's a cool guy and all, but he's not God. Are you like, what? It really blows my mind when they say it, but now I have a better understanding because, again, I was there. I was in there, and I was fighting the power up front. It was just kind of like what I do. I'm being a friend no matter where I'm at, but I'm like fighting the power, saying racism and da-da-da and the white, and they didn't hire me because my name. And I was in that. I was in that completely, and I was godless. And that's why I was so angry. And that's
I didn't realize that. So you went through that phase yourself.
Oh, yeah.
We jumped over that bit, I think.
Oh, I was able to use all of the leftist argument against the Bible.
Okay.
Right. Which at the end of the day, when I started learning the Bible and learned, I was like, wait a minute, that's why I always say Christians, we need to be biblically literate, because the arguments that they use are weak at the end of the day. Oh, the Council of Nicaea, that's the only reason why. And Constantine, that's the only reason it's spread. And you're like, if you really look into it, like, no, it was happening before Constantine did all this stuff. They're being persecuted. Think about, Jesus Christ came in a certain time, and it was for a certain reason, and it worked in a certain way. And the Bible actually was put together. People were actually passing this around. They actually spoke in code in the Bibles because they knew they were going to get taken out by the Sanhedrin or the Roman society for being the crazy Jesus followers of the way, all this stuff. And I'm like, wow, I was going on thinking that I was really intellectually brilliant by regurgitating godlessness, that at the end of the day, when now I have a better understanding of the Bible, the godlessness is actually weak. Doesn't really stand up that hard. And I even watch guys do debates on there with the atheists, and I'm like, it's so simple. You can break them down, but I don't know. I think that a lot of times the nicety still plays a little too much in our society, where it's like, these things are a matter of fact, man.
You should check out Matt Walsh's book if you haven't already. What was it called? Church of Cowards.
Oh, wow.
He kind of addresses that, the kind of the church of nice in there.
Yeah. We've lost. Like, for example, my mom, she was here when she would visit us back in Los Angeles, right after Xavier, right when Xavier was born. And I told her, we were talking one day, I was like, I'm praying for you, right? She's like, yeah, okay, you don't have to say anything. And I was like, well, they'll just let you know it's happening. Well, why do you have to say it? I'm like, well,
if you said, I'm giving you good vibes, thank you.
She's like, why do you have to say it? And I go, well,
to make you feel awkward first.
Just a little bit.
Number two.
No, well, I was like, because Jesus told us we have to. We have to preach to all 2 and 4-leggeds. Like, we have to preach to everyone. She's like, well, I don't understand why. And it's so interesting because she starts to ask me, well, why did God kill a bunch of people? The whole like genocide thing they want to, a lot of people who don't have God want to say. And before, that used to be an argument. Oh, yeah? Well, then why is he going to kill babies and genocide? Then I learned about what was going on in Moab. And it's like, oh, that was judgment. That's judgment, guys. Which is kind of just what God can do. He judges them for killing babies. Yeah. That's why he did it. Yeah. And so whereas before the argument was like, well, he's just bad then because he killed, and I've never heard a Christian break down the reason. And I'm like, that's why we lose, because we don't know how to defend what they throw at us, the faith. And we need to defend the faith. Yeah. Because I believe if we defend the faith, somebody's listening, and I've seen it happen, they're going to have the godlessness or the faith. And if you can't defend it, which so many people did in my life growing up when I'd ask questions like, why would he destroy the Tower of Babel? I mean, wouldn't it be easier if we all knew could speak the same language? Yeah. And the pastor at the time goes, well, God does what he does. And I'm like, all right, man.
I was like fake. I was agnostic, leaning towards atheism until I was 17. And it was something similar. I would ask my mom or grandma or someone questions, and it was probably the case that I was just an arrogant little teenager that really wasn't looking for a right answer. And even if they had given it to me, I would have mocked it. But the answer was often, it's a mystery. And I'm like, well, maybe it is, but at least give it a shot.
Give me something, and it's not really as much of a his reasoning can be a mystery.
So yeah, if I'm like 16, I got all these raging hormones, and my options are God and no sex, and we don't really have any arguments for God or Christianity,
right?
Or MTV and Playboy, and I'm like, well, this looks much better.
Yeah, this this is calling me.
Yeah. I just really feel led.
It makes sense. I don't understand where you're coming from. So I watched it, and that's got me to falling. My wife and I fell into your show. We're like, whoa.
How did you find it? Or did you just
it came up on our feed because we had been looking at a lot of Jesus and God stuff on YouTube. And so
it's amazing how far it reaches.
Yeah. How it can just get in there. And then I remember I was telling you about, it was I really watched that whole episode about possession.
Yeah.
And
was it with an exorcist?
Yeah, with an exorcist.
Do you remember who that was?
I forget his name.
Father Vincent Lampert.
Yes.
Is that him?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
And he was talking about, I remember saying the weight of a baby before like they're baptized compared to after. Yeah. And reason why it really gets me is because that's the other thing that I think Christianity and different denominations have really fallen off. That I don't know Catholicism well enough, but I do know that they do. That is a part of what is known within Catholicism is the evil that does exist and wants to, pressure us into different, to destroy ourselves.
Demonic exist and want to drag us to hell. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think we need to know that as well. And
100%.
Right?
This is the battle. It's not the Democrats.
No, not at all.
These are our brothers and sisters
who
Christ died for. It's the demonic who hate us.
It's principalities, right?
That's right. Yep. Or 1 Peter 5:8, the devil prowls around like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. Stand up to him. Yeah.
And they run. And he runs when you do. in the name of Christ.
Yeah.
It's so weird that you can like really, and then he goes.
Yeah.
It's so maddening.
He's a coward.
Sorry. And so, yeah, he is ultimately, and he's super arrogant. I always think about the Job story, about his arrogance, because he was at one point the number one angel, right? He's hanging out with God, and he's supposed to lead the worship. Later on, he falls because he's like, I'm so beautiful. I can run my own. I can be like the Most High. Then the Job thing comes along, and I remember. I've heard the story in the past, but in my discipleship class I started doing, we got to that story and I'm listening to it and we're reading it and I'm just like, wait a minute. We just learned God is everything. He's outside of space and time. What type of arrogance do you need to have to make a bet with someone that knows what's happening tomorrow? I'm like, wait a minute, what?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Like that hit a level of arrogance to me because I'm like, why would I make a bet if you knew who was? It was like the Back to the Future 2, right? When old boy had the book, right? Why would I make a bet against anyone that knew what was going to happen? And to do it like, I'm going to show you. To me, I would be like, and this is why I keep talking about like, his pride is the beginning of the fall, right? Because he goes, I bet you I can do this. And God's like, okay. As soon as he said, okay, I'm like, nah, I'm all right. I'm like, forget it. I'm going to go try somebody else, And actually God brought it up, right? He's like, have you tested my servant Job?
Yeah.
Why? Like, what? It's like, hey, you want to bet against the 98 Chicago Bulls? Like, against who they playing? I don't know. They're playing Orlando Magic. No, I'm out. I'm good. And it's like, it was really, it just, which helps me laugh more at Satan and like who he is. Cause I'm like, what?
Yeah, we grow up with this idea that the opposite of God is Satan, but no, Satan is a creature. The opposite of Satan is Saint Michael, the archangel, who casts him down, right, in Revelation 12. So what were you saying about denominations?
Oh, with the denominations, I just feel like they need to get more into not just saying the love of God is great. I think that's important, but the understanding of what evil is.
Oh, I see. The spiritual battle.
Yeah, instead of just saying, and I'm not saying they say this, but it can come off as a little, that's how people can kind of take it, where it's like, if you don't do this, you're going to hell. No. The enemy wants to put you in a direction away from God, which ends up being hell. What does he do? Well, it starts off as a whisper. You think about what he did to Eve. He didn't come in there with horns and go, you eat this apple. And he goes, hey.
He puts suspicion in her heart
hey.
to the goodness of the Father.
I want to tell you about Hallow, which is the #1 downloaded prayer app in the world. It's outstanding. Hallow.com/Matt Fradd. Sign up over there right now and you will get the first 3 months for free. That's like a lot of time. You can decide whether it's useful to you or not, whether it's helpful. If you don't like it, you can always quit. Hallow.com/Matt Fradd. I use it. My family uses it. It's fantastic. There are over 10,000 audio guided prayers, meditations, and music, including my lo-fi. Hallow has been downloaded over 15 million times in 150 different countries. It helps you pray, helps you meditate, helps you sleep better. It helps you build a daily routine and a habit of prayer. There's honestly so much excellent stuff on this app that it's difficult to get through it all. Just go check it out. Hallow.com/Matt Fradd. The link is in the description below. It even has an entire section for kids. So if you're a parent, you could play little Bible stories to them at night. It'll help them pray. Fantastic. Hallow.com/Matt Fradd.
Sam Shamoon is what you were talking about.
Yes. Well, we're talking about blow. No,
I know, but I want to get to Sam Shamoon. You mentioned it in the break. So.
Yeah. So Sam,
what were you saying? What did your wife say? Or?
So my wife actually just, are we good? Yeah. So my wife just actually, she texts, she goes, hey, you should tell Matt to have Sam on if he hasn't. I'm like, we watched him have Sam on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this was back in the day. It was like one of those, it was a virtual conversation. Yeah, I mean, I don't know him that well, but from the little I know, he seems like a really lovely man.
You should bring him in. I think Sam's a very interesting guy.
Where's he at with his journey? I honestly have not followed him, so I don't know.
He is, he's still out there breaking down Muslims and Jehovah's Witnesses. Yeah, he's still breaking them down, but he does Bible studies. He really gets into weeds. And what he did, I think we talked about a little bit why my view of Catholicism changed. I used to think that, Catholics are, just a glorified pagans because they're praying to Mother Mary. That's weird. Like, why would you do that? It says Jesus only, you know. And he broke down. Oh my goodness. I forget the exact part, but it also says it again in Ephesians 6 when you're going down, you know, with all prayers and supplication to the saints as well. And he's like, he broke it down to what's going on in heaven. He's in heaven. The saints are at church worshiping the Lord.
Yeah, Revelation 5, right? Offering the prayers of the saints.
Exactly. And so he's like, well, it's like, he's like, when you're in church, you go to someone, you ask them to pray for you, correct, to God.
And I don't thereby usurp the authority of Christ.
Not at all. You're
say,
asking.
Hey, Siaka, please pray for me.
Yeah, not at all.
Yeah.
So when you're asking.
And you would never look at me and go, hey, why don't you go directly to Christ? I'm like, and if you did say that.
wouldn't it be funny if I was like, what?
What?
Dude,
No.
go talk to Christ, man.
Yeah.
I'm
and
not
I
God.
would say to you, oh, I am.
Yeah,
but you're
I
my
just didn't
brother,
help.
and this is the way
Yes.
he's set things up.
And then the Virgin Mother and being who she was, it's like, why would you not ask? And it says in the word, praying to all saints for supplications, right?
Also, it says he's the God of the living, not the dead. So it's not necromancy.
Yeah.
Like necromancy is summoning information from the dead.
Yeah.
When I pray to the saints, I'm giving them information and I'm saying, would you pray for me?
Would you pray for me?
Yeah.
You're there in the church with God.
Yeah.
Like,
and if the
let's
prayer
do
of
it.
a righteous man avails much, who's more righteous?
than the Virgin Mary? Yeah. So that when he broke that down,
okay, is he Catholic?
I don't know if he's Catholic. I think he's just.
I'm going to go out on a limb.
He's just Christian.
I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I hope I'm not divulging anything that I shouldn't. Sam, if you ever watch this, I do beg your forgiveness. I don't think I am, but he confided in me that he prays the rosary.
Really?
Yeah. Like, that's awesome.
I mean, look, I at this point, the more I'm getting into the word and the Bible, and Sam breaks it down in ways where you can get deeper. I'm like,
I like to think of the rosary as a Bible study on beads, because with each decade, as you pray the Hail Mary, and you think about what the Hail Mary is, this is the moment where Satan's kingdom collapsed. Hail Mary, full of grace. It was these words where the eternal God became a zygote. I mean, that's the most powerful words. And every time we say Hail Mary, we're reminding of the devil of his downfall. But as we do this, we're meditating on the life of Christ. So it is a way, like I pray the rosary every day, and when I do, I'm thinking of Christ as a 12-year-old teaching the teachers. I think of him crucified, and it's very Christocentric prayer. But I get it. I would imagine as someone in a Protestant tradition looking in at Catholics, there's a lot of differences. We use language differently. I could see that it could freak people out. It was Lewis who said that Catholics look at Protestants and see a desert. Like, where is everything? Protestants look at Catholics and see an overrun jungle. They're like, what is with all this stuff?
He says he's the desert. Where is everything?
Yeah.
What are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Well, actually, I went and visited in Tennessee. I went to, because we were church shopping.
Yeah.
And I went to a Orthodox church. And I don't know if it's for me yet. Yeah. But it definitely, I appreciate what they're doing. Because I was talking to one of the guys, Alex, there, brilliant young kid, about 27, like blows your mind. And he's like, well, you ever been to synagogue? I'm like, yeah. He goes, they do the same thing. They're there to do prayers and hymns. I'm like, oh, because we came in when we went there. Every church we go with our Bibles. I'm like, I'm gonna go learn some stuff today, you know. And we get in there, and they just looked at me. Our neighbors who invited us, they're like, oh, that's cute. And then everything was just like singing, and then the prayers, and then we sat down, and he talked a little bit, and singing, and nothing was in Scripture. And I'm just like, and for me, because Scripture is just so like, I love hearing people who have scriptural knowledge, because it feeds me, right? So when I'm there, I'm like, oh. Like I didn't feel fed, but I understand like what they're doing. And he broke it down. He's like, the idea is that's where we go to worship, like David did, go in the temple to worship, right? But every other time is when we're supposed to be studying. I'm like, well, that's cool. Yeah. But I still kind of want to go to church and be like, we're going through Revelation and it means this. And I'm like, do I agree or disagree? But I've had, ever since that Sam moment on your show, and then he broke down when somebody asked him, like, are Catholics pagans? And he broke that down. I've had a lot more grace in understanding the different denominations, especially the oldest ones with the Orthodoxy and Catholicism. And now it's more like, wanting to have better understanding as opposed to go, you guys just are crazy.
But this is what we were talking about earlier, right? The ability to entertain. This is Aristotle, I think he said, the mark of an intelligent man is the ability to entertain a position without accepting it. Whereas what we were talking about before with the woke mind virus or the cult mentality is, I can't entertain it.
No.
So you can think about Catholicism. Yeah. I think what I'd want you to do as a Catholic is I'd say, learn what the Catholic Church teaches from intelligent Catholics.
Yes.
I think sometimes Protestants, all they know about the Catholic Church is what Protestants have told them. Yeah. So it's like, if you want to reject the Catholic Church, at least listen to what the Catholics are saying about Catholicism.
Well, it's the same thing with the left to the right or the right to the left. Like I was learning about the right from other people on the left.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until I started doing that job and being around other Republicans, I was like, oh, wait a minute, this is not what it is. Yeah. And to me, the other side that really opened me up to other churches like Catholicism and Orthodoxy is in Revelation when he's talking to the 7 churches. And my pastor, we were doing discipleship, we read that portion together and he goes, what does Jesus say in the beginning of this that you guys notice? And no one could have the answer. He says, to my churches, or to my church. They're all his churches. I'm like, oh, huh. So while I'm over there being like, well, this is the better way, they believe he was divine, that he died for our sins, and he came back. That's a baseline, or at least that's the early church saying that's the baseline. So I'm like, huh, maybe I shouldn't be so quick to go, you're pagan, man. You're praying to dead people. Like, what are you doing? I should look at it like maybe I don't understand it. Yeah, but there's a reason why it's still here. Yeah, and
well, I think you're welcome to explore the biblical and patristic roots of some of these practices and come to the conclusion you're wrong. I think and if I am wrong, right, as a Catholic, if I'm wrong, I think as a Christian brother, you should correct me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they do say that.
There's one, but you can do that in an arrogant, ignorant way where you're not really trying to understand and you're just. But no, I think a good Catholic should want to be corrected about certain things if we're wrong on that. But.
So that's the point I was saying about our delivery system. The Jews get this right, where they press the young people to press back on their faith. Right? That's what a lot of times Shabbat dinner is about. Like, explain to where it is, right?
Yeah.
And so these people are defending themselves. Muslims do it right too. That's there was I gotta look up his name, but it was Nabib. I think it was a former Muslim.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
He's sometimes on with Shamoon.
He was.
Okay.
His buddy was on. Okay. Nabib ended up dying of cancer.
Oh, of course.
Yes.
God rest his soul.
Oh, and he's made a statement. He goes, I was being prepared to go when we moved to America.
Yeah,
right?
I have listened to him.
He's amazing.
He seems lovely. He seemed like a beautiful man.
And he said, I'm being prepared by my mom to go defend the faith. I get to school, junior high, and none of these Christians say anything to me about the Gospels. I'm thinking one of two things. Either one, they don't care about my soul, or two, they don't believe their Gospels.
Yeah.
So our delivery system has to be in a way where I think within the family, I want to challenge my son and have him challenge me on the scripture, on the gospel, and what like these questions, so that we're in a mode of like we're athletic about it, if you will, right? If you're playing sports, you don't just run straight unless it's just track, but you're playing basketball, you're going all over the place. I think we need to be able to move a little more with it, and that's going to be the more we're training, the more you train with something, the more comfortable you are that when the situation arises, you react. Martial arts, right? Does the same thing. So if we're sitting there and we're pushing our kids in a way where it's like, think about it. Well, what do you think? Well, you push back on me. What do I think? What do you know to push back on me?
Yeah.
So now they're thinking in this way where when someone says something in the classroom, they've already been having this type of training at home.
Yeah.
But no, it's just we go to church, we come home, and we chill out and hang out.
Yeah, I mean, Christianity is a reasonable faith. It's not the sort of faith where you leave your brain at the door and believe a bunch of things that have no basis, in history and reason.
Yeah, it's very reasonable.
Yeah,
I was like this point when Jesus. This is one thing that blew my mind. When Jesus says, and I've watched a lot of debates online, and to be like, well, when he says, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." If he's God, why would he say that? And I was reading in my New King James how it says, it points to what that reference is, and I go back to Proverbs 22, right, or Psalms 22. Sorry.
Oh yeah.
Psalms 22, and it starts out, "Forgive them, Father, and they don't know what to do," and it just talks about what happens.
Yeah.
And I'm like, can you imagine?
Well, not forgive me, Father, for not know what they do, but why have you forsaken me?
Why have you forsaken me? I'm sorry. Let me get that right. Is why have you forsaken me? And it's like that's their argument. And I'm like, can you imagine if you're dying, right? And you say something like Uptown Funk and you die.
Yeah.
And then people have to go, wait a minute, I know that song. And they have to go back and they read the lyrics and they go, oh, that's what he meant. I'm like, that's what he was doing. Yeah. And that bro, that like blew my mind about how clever and beautiful Jesus was all the way till the end. He's like, yo, I can't just say I'm God because you're not going to get that.
Yeah.
Boom. And then all the Jews around are going, because especially, back then they're studying it like this. They don't have TV and TikTok to like this is what they were studying. First century Jews were like, yo, when is he coming? Or is that him? Like they're looking for it. And the fact that he could say that right before he dies, can you imagine? That's what you've been waiting for. And you sit there and he says this right before he passes and you're like,
you already know the ending.
Yeah.
The vindication of the innocent.
You're like, whoa. Yeah. And so that's like, again, those are the type of things we need to like bring Christ out in that way, because he was so much more than like the hippie Jesus who was the surfer looking dude that they try to sell us, Those are the kind of things that were like, wow, like God is just cool.
I said I would do this to you. Would you find it patronizing if I gave you a rosary?
No, not at all.
Here's a rosary.
Thank you, sir. I actually, as it was getting closer, I was actually looking forward to this.
Yeah, it's a simple thing, but I mean, there's something lovely about an incarnational thing. I mean, we all know this. If you have a Bible that you buy from a dollar store, or if you have a nice leather-bound Bible, there's a difference.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have something like that.
So tell me this. Can you explain?
Yes.
So if I was to do the rosary, where do I start?
Josiah, do your thing. He's going to print one off for you. He does it. Yeah. So here's what you do. All right. This. I'll give you the bare minimum.
Okay.
So we have what's called, the Nicene Creed,
right,
which was the creed established at the Council of Nicaea that has the basic prayer. There's one Our Father. Apostles' Creed, sorry. All right. Slightly modified, but basically the same thing. 3 Hail Marys.
Okay.
A Glory Be, which is glory be to the Father and to the Son and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and will be forever. Amen. You then do, stop it. You then do an Our Father, okay, then 10 Hail Marys, a Glory Be. Our Father, 10 Hail Marys, Glory Be. It's all the way around, but here's the thing. There are different mysteries. So you have joyful, sorrowful, and glorious mysteries. And so the joyful mysteries are things like the Annunciation. So while I'm praying these 10 Hail Marys, I'm meditating in my mind upon the scripture passage of the angel Gabriel who approached the Blessed Virgin and said this to her. That's what I'm meditating on. Maybe even putting myself in that story, Yeah. And I'll say the Glory Be. Now I'm on to the second decade, which is when our Blessed Mother visits Elizabeth, and I'm with the Christ in her womb. So that's what I mean when I say it's a Bible study on beads, So it's,
it kind of reminds me of...
And to the... Sorry to interrupt you, but I think to the argument, someone will talk about, what about vain repetition? Yeah, vain repetition's bad, but this isn't vain. This is repetition, but the angels are repeating holy, holy, holy. And I don't think anyone would accuse them of that either. Yeah. So it can be, but just because something can be abused doesn't mean it's wrong. So I actually find it very rhythmic. It's like, I prayed it today. I sat down and I just take 20 minutes and I close my eyes and I just sort of envision that biblical passage and I get to meditate on the life of Christ. So anyway.
What kind of reminds me of?
Yeah.
It's like when people try to stop smoking, they wear a rubber band and every time they have a craving, they flick it. No, but it's like, I can see it for like anger. Sometimes I get really frustrated at things in life and I'm just like, and then I'll come back later. It's like, if you can have...
And having a physical item in your pocket. I mean, look, we're humans. There's no point trying to pretend to be an angel and say we don't need physical reminders.
True. I mean,
now, look, I would also say if you're uncomfortable praying the Hail Mary, maybe you could just repeat the Our Father, or just even something like Jesus have mercy on me. Yeah. Just something like that. It's just...
It's about getting into a sense of rhythm.
I think so.
And then it also, like you said, it calms the spirit.
It does, for sure. Hey!
There we go.
There's the prayers.
Oh, man.
It's funny. You probably saw me do this to Andrew Clavin. If you watch the show.
Yes.
And Claven actually tweeted that he's prayed it a few times since I gave it to him.
He also, in the most recent Daily Wire backstage, apparently said in their Hallow ad that he's been using Hallow to pray the rosary.
Oh my goodness! So there you go. Claven's praying the rosary now. So
one of the guys.
Thank you, Josiah.
One of the guys there, David, is Catholic, and Knowles is Catholic too, correct? Yeah. And so
Knowles is a Shiite Catholic, I think.
So. Shia Catholic.
That's a joke. Like
okay.
Shiite Muslim.
Yeah,
like
I was
the
like,
real
wait a second.
hardcore.
Yeah,
just joking.
Well, I was like, whoa, wait a minute.
No.
And he's talking about like, hey, we should go to Rome and go to Israel if everything clears up next year. I'm like, yeah, I'd love to. And he kind of jokingly he's like, we're trying to get everyone to become Catholics. We're working on Ben, and maybe he'll come over. But I'm like, okay, look, it to me, it's like,
well, to put it in a way, look, I think, yes, I like, as Catholics want Protestants to become Catholic. Yeah. But at the same time, I think to put it this way, we can learn from each other.
Yes.
Now, that might sound wishy-washy, and I don't mean it that way.
It doesn't.
But like, I sometimes will see some of my Protestant friends, and I see their like the love of Scripture, like you reading with your wife. Yeah. I can learn from you. Go, thank you. Yeah. Now, my wife and I will read the New Testament together. Yeah. I don't think we should be afraid of that. So if it's something about the Rosary appeals to you, well, you can maybe learn from us.
Here's the thing. I think there's core tenets that we mentioned earlier. And if some of the tenants go, well, you can be like the Most High, you probably want to not avoid that one. But if it's like to learn more about why you guys pray to certain saints, that has cleared so much up. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's pretty intense because the word says to. So now I have a better understanding of because when I read it, I was like, oh yeah, you pray to saints and da 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 da. But then I'm only thinking Jesus. So I'm actually negating a point of what the word actually says.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if I can, and not saying it makes me any less of a Christian, but if I can add more in a weight, more substance to it, why not? It doesn't mean I have to show up at Mass every week or not show up at Mass, but I know it's like, wow, if I can get closer to God, if I can do something that propels me closer to God, I believe, and He's shown me that He will correct me. If it's wrong, He lets me know. He lets me know in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, and like Catholics view the Blessed Virgin Mary as the mother of all Christians. So if you look at Revelation, what's really interesting, you look at Revelation chapter 12, you've got this woman clothed with the sun, the moon under her feet. She gives birth to the one who'll rule the world, nations with an iron scepter. We see this is the Blessed Virgin Mary, and it talks about the dragon that goes off to make war with her offspring, and it says who the offspring are, those who keep the commandments. And so when Christ on the cross gave, John to Mary and Mary to John, He calls her woman, hearkening back to Eve because she's the new Eve. And so Catholics think of Mary as the Blessed Mother, and her whole role is to lead us to Jesus. She's like the moon. Whatever glory the moon has is from the sun. It's the light is not its own light. So too with the Blessed Virgin Mary.
Wow.
We sing her praises not because her glory originates in herself. It's because look how wonderful God is to create this beautiful creature. So it all goes back to God, And,
wow, it's just honoring His points of His creation.
It's like if God creates the most beautiful creature ever, you're like, well, I can't look at that, can't say that's beautiful. It's like, what are you talking about? Yeah. You look at a baby and you dote over it. You see a sunset, you revere it.
Yeah.
And does anyone think we're not giving glory to God?
Well, that's the thing. The sunset's a great example because people say, man, look at that. God's so great.
Yeah,
but exactly. It's the sunset that initiates the feeling.
But imagine this conversation. Imagine if someone's like, oh, look, that sunset is so beautiful. And imagine somebody like, well, hang on. That's God, remember? You're like, why are you even doing that? That's
like,
weird
I know
that you're speaking
like, that's
like
the whole
that.
Point, yeah.
And I think that's how Catholics feel when they say the Blessed Virgin Mary. They speak of her so beautifully. So for someone to say, well, hang on, no, that's God. The Catholics like, what are you? Of course, that didn't. I don't understand why you're saying that.
It's like, huh?
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because again, from the outside looking in, it was like, why are they revering this person as Jesus? And you're like, no. She's nothing.
She's less than nothing compared to He who is, because He's the only one who is. All of her glory comes from Him.
I just love to debate, actually, for the last month and a half.
Yeah.
I've been debating Jehovah's Witnesses that come to the house.
Yeah.
My wife has to come and get me.
I love it. You say it with a wink. Like, I bet that's the best part of your day when your wife's like, hey, honey.
She's like, baby, you got to come back in for your breakfast. I'm like, oh, okay, dang it. See you guys in 2 weeks?
Yeah.
They actually said they couldn't make it again.
I bet they did. Yeah.
Oh, but it's like, it's so, I really, because I think it's fun, first off, but I think it's fun when you can, because I don't do it in a way where it's like, man, you're crazy. It's like, now I've gotten to a place where I'm trying to do it to help them to see Christ and who he is. Like, you have to contend with these words that are in the book that you say you follow. Like, go do that. But it's been a lot of fun, and to get more information for that standpoint, it helps me to get closer to the Lord. But then, like, when I hear stuff too, now I can go, well, that actually is not really, and let's not go into that misinformation about it. And you could try checking this out. Check out this verse in here and see what it's all about. Well, what's the context of everything? Like, learning hermeneutics from my discipleship class and all that has been, it's been amazing. I just wish that you're talking about that trade school earlier, where it's like you can leave with like a 4-year degree in trade and also in theology. I'm like, man, if we were getting back to that as a country, we would, the Americanism would go to such an amazing level, go back to when the founding of the country, first graders had to memorize John, right? The whole book of John, like that was their reading. I'm like, cool. Now we can barely read and write.
Now I don't even know anyone's number but mine and my wife's.
Yeah. Well, at least you know your wife's. I'm
still working on that one.
Oh, Mary, help me.
Hail Mary. All right, we have to talk about January 6th.
J6.
Now, I'm not coming into this discussion knowing anything about what happened with you.
Really?
With you, not with January 6th. Yeah. You just mentioned that you were there?
Yeah.
All right, so tell me what...
So J6... I wanted to go there because I felt this was going to be historic. I didn't know what. This is my third time going to DC in at that point 4 months or 5 months or something. And I was like, you know what? I want to see something. I just, and on the other side, because being part of Hollywood and being part of television and film, I understand how they manipulate video.
Yep.
And I'm like, one thing that's going to have there is they're going to have all these people with their own cameras. Yeah. So in my head, I was like, so they can't lie. That's what I was thinking. There's no way they could tell a story because everyone's going to have their own footage. I didn't understand the reach that they had.
You're thinking this before January 6th.
Oh, yeah. I was like, yeah, I'm going to go there. It's going to be cool. I'm going to see something, like get a record history. So we're there. I'm there with this girl at the time that I was seeing, and we were staying at the Marriott across the street from the Freedom Plaza right there. It's not that far walk away from where we stood, which was a little bit in front of the Washington Monument. We're like the street of where that starts if you're going back up the path. So we're at the street level, close to the street, but behind a couple of trees. And it was super cold. And at this point, I wasn't really there for the speech because I'm one of those, I'll intake a lot of media. So I've heard him say the stuff over and over, the numbers and him Giuliani. So it wasn't about like, is he going to say the thing? Like I heard it all. So it was more like hanging out, taking pictures of people that were all marching over to the Capitol. And me and old girl, I'm like, it's cold. Let's just go back to the hotel room. I'm like, okay. So go back to the hotel room, take my boots off. I'm hanging out, watching TV. I was like, let me see. And this is probably... Well, I don't know. The path that God has put me on because of this has been ultimately great. So I have to say, I always think, let me see what the other side is saying about this. So I turn on MSNBC. And there's a reporter going, it's a dark scene or something, like being very macabre. And it's like, there's blood on the ground and the people and the cops. And I'm like, she's lying. Mind you, I have my experience of almost a whole year of Beverly Hills rallies, which is like nothing but love. Peaceful. Even when Antifa came and started fights, it got pushed away, and then we went back to loving on each other again. And so, and I'll tell you the Antifa story, that's a whole nother thing. But so I'm like, she's lying. So I'm like, I'm gonna be the crazy guy who in a news report that comes behind the camera and go, that's what I want to do. So I put on my boots. I'm like, I'm gonna go tell them, go find that camera crew. So I start heading down, and it's about a mile walk from the hotel to the Capitol. I get there. Is probably like an hour and a half, almost 2 hours after all the major stuff that had been played over and over on TV even happened. So as I'm walking down, people are walking back. I'm like, is it over? People leave? They're like, no, there's still people there. People are just meandering. It's not like people are like, oh, it's still happening. Like, no. So it's like, people are there. The same energy I got the time I came before. And so I get down closer to the Capitol. And as I'm walking, I just by myself, I actually bump into this one guy's like, excuse me. I'm like, oh, my bad. And I bump into him. I look up. It's MAGA Hulk. And a couple of the guys in the photo I was telling you about, they're all there. I'm like, oh, what's up? What's going on? We're like, giving each other love. Some lady recognized us from Beverly Hills. She's like, hey, can I interview you guys? We're like, okay. So MAGA Hulk and I are doing interviews. And the interview ends exactly when we're by the scaffold where the American flag was draped over. And so the interview pretty much stops when people start singing the national anthem. So we turn, take a hat off, and we're singing the national anthem. The whole place is singing the national anthem. I'm like, wow, this is awesome. So one of the guys like, hey, let's walk up the scaffold and go to the next level. Okay. So we start walking. As we get closer to the top of the stairs, or the scaffold leads to like the second level of the Capitol, I believe. Yeah, you can smell remnants of what is it? Pepper spray. Oh. So you kind of smell in the air, but it's not. You can tell it'd been there.
Yeah.
So you're kind of like, oh wow, this kind of sucks. But then I'm walking around. I see cops are standing on the side of a wall, and people are just kind of standing there. And one cop was just spraying the whole crowd, and you're like, they're just standing there. One lady stands on top of the wall, like just kind of being more annoying in front of a cop, and the cop pushes her off. And you're like, I'm like, oh wow. And I walk around. Wow. Yeah, I walk around to the other side. I'm like, all right, this is crazy over here. Let me walk to the other side. Basically, just see what's going on. I walked to the other side where it was pretty calm. There wasn't a bunch of people doing anything. Everyone's just kind of, again, meandering around. As I go up the steps, I run into this one guy that he ended up getting indicted the day that they raided my house. He got indicted, and I just see him. I'm like, oh, what's up? And we say hi. I'm recording some, things I'm seeing. People are standing there, and I'm like, one guy was like, yeah, the cowards are hiding inside. And I was like, yeah, they're cowards, and walking around and recording. And there's a doorway. Now, there were these two guys who were in all military gear with gas masks on, so I couldn't see their face. And one guy's like, I'm following you. I was like, all right, let's go. And mind you, again, coming from the last time I was in DC and the Beverly Hills rallies, Trump supporters were friendly. They're nice. They're cordial together. It's not like, I can't trust you, can't trust. So he's like, I'm following you. I was like, all right, come on, let's go, bud. Not thinking anything of it. We get to the doorway, and I was like, hey, this is the way to go in. Let's see what's going on. Like, again, let's just see what's going on. We're kind of walking into the doorway, and it was like, imagine going to a rock concert or a football game where it's just packed and you got to kind of take slow steps together. Yeah. I get to the doorway. I get about maybe about a foot in maybe. And then the cops were saying they're kind of stopping us from going any further anymore. So we're just standing there, and I get my phone. So I was like, all right, I reach around, and I'm starting to like record as much as I can get. One guy over here, and I'm like, I heard they got Nancy Pelosi's desk or whatever. What's going on? Do you hear that? And the guy's like, I don't know. And then there's cops standing against the wall, just hanging out.
So at this point, do you believe that you're breaking and entering into the Capitol?
Why would I? No. No one said anything. No one's done anything. The other cops, there's cops lined up against the wall on the inside standing there. And I have the footage of all this. So the only one guy was just kind of standing there, kind of holding us off so we can't go any further. Then a guy in a riot gear comes up. He goes, I need you guys to go back the other way now. We're, okay. Kind of doing it. We're kind of talking a little bit here, and I'm like, hey, yeah, we're gonna get it done. We're being reasonable. And I was kind of joking on the film, like, this is the most reasonable riot I've ever seen. Like kind of joking, like, because that's kind of what I do. And so I turn around, I go, we're gonna get it done, man. We're gonna be reasonable. I turn around, all right, guys, we got to go back the other way.
Yeah.
So he gives me a command, or us a command. I repeat the command back to people behind me. We shuffle back out. Now the guys who were in the mask, I go, hey, let's go this way. And so we. Basically the doors here, we come out and we walk to this side, and there was a window that was all busted up, and I'm like, man, people were pissed. Like, I'm like, this is what happens when you lock people up for a whole year, and then like, and I said it, and I was like, and then you steal the election, like, because that's what I thought happened. I really thought we see now 17 million people just disappeared over the last recent election. I'm like, this is what happens. And I'm yelling, and then I started saying, I'm like, look, guys, we're not mad at you at all. I know people aren't mad at you. They're just mad at what this government's been doing to them. And there was one cop there that I did see somebody had grabbed his pepper spray or a pepper spray, and then they threw it back, and this one cop was standing around, and he got hit in the head. It was like, it wasn't, anything too hard in a way where he knocked him out or anything, but he was standing there now by the window, so just kind of chilling. And I go, hey man, again, this is all on tape. Or on video, I should say. We don't have tape anymore. I'm like, hey man, I saw what happened. That wasn't cool. Are you okay? He's like, nah, he kind of does this. I'm like, I hear there's a curfew. I go, who's going to enforce that? And he's like, I was like, not you, huh? He's like, clock on the wall says it's time for you to be off. I kind of laugh and joke. I'm like, okay. So I walk away. I walk, so the window's here. I walk a little further down to the side of the building. And on this other side of the building, there's a bunch of riot cops just lined up, just standing there, not doing anything. So I go up to them. I'm like, guys, like, we're not bad people. We're not trying to do this. People are just upset of what's been going on in the country and see what's happening. Nothing against you. Cause again, as Republicans and Trump supporters and MAGA, like, it's not like we're anti-police at all. You know, if anything, we back the blue, all this stuff. So I'm talking to a guy. I go, you guys, like, everyone's hiding. I'm not hiding. I even said, my name's Siaka Massaquoi. I'm an American. I'm not sitting here trying to hide for this. People are just upset. So then I turn and I walk around the other way to get some more video and see some more stuff. I saw this guy, Philip. We took a selfie. And then I'm walking around some more. And the two things that I saw that really stood out, why I knew some of the people there weren't really MAGA supporters or Republicans, was there were these two guys, separate occasions. One early on, he was grabbing men from behind and going, "Let's go," and trying to push them forward. Oh, and I was like, leaders don't do that. Real men don't do that. If you want someone to follow you, you go, follow me this way. And I saw it again with someone else doing it, and this big guy grabbed him, and the big, white dude was like, "Shut up," and threw him back, like, "Cut it out," like that. And I'm like, and so I noticed that because of Beverly Hills, when that Antifa group came, they literally came, it looked like the orcs. They were coming in Helm's Deep for two towers. Like, we were all light and they were coming in, it was dark. They were all dressed up in bike gear and like had like bats and everything. And I noticed there were like 3 or 4 kids that were Antifa weeks before giving us crap, now dressed up in MAGA gear. Mm-hmm. But it was all big, so it wasn't fitting them properly. And in Beverly Hills, when they had separated us, these guys were on the side screaming curse words at Antifa, which was getting our side worked up.
Oh, interesting.
So when I saw those two guys pushing people, I was like, that's Antifa.
You knew that right away.
Right away, because I saw them do it the other way, where they were trying to like, "Yeah, you piece of racist piece of that." And I'm like, I'm looking at these, and one of the guys, I remember I called him coward because he tried to like get a black dude to fight somebody else for him, even though the guy was talking to him. He's like, "Oh, you said monkey? Hey, black dude, he said monkey, beat him." And I'm like, no, you're a coward. I saw the situation. He wasn't talking to black, he was talking to you. And so every time I saw him come after I'm like, "Hey, coward, what's up, buddy?" Right? And so when I saw that behavior, I was like, this is something else. Anyway, I leave to go home, go back to the hotel. And as I'm leaving, I noticed the cars that were parked. And I kind of chuckle, and I made a joke. And people walking around go, "If this was Antifa riot, those cars would be burning right now." And everyone's like, "I know, ha ha ha." We're laughing. Think nothing of it, because we just saw the summer of love, right? So get back to the hotel. Girls were like, "I was worried. I was trying to call you," and I'm like, "Oh, I didn't even see my phone." Get back home, and I was not hiding that I was there or what I did, because I'm like, "Hey, you can see me. You're not gonna, we got to get him because he was just there." And then they started raiding people's houses. And I was like, oh, wow. I'm like, well, again, I've been very vocal on social media. I'm not trying to hide. So it's not like, I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think that they would come after me because I've been so vocal and I was talking to the cops. My name's Siaka Massaquoi, like all that stuff. And then on June 10th, at like 5:45 in the morning, I'm sleeping in the way my house is situated. The first 2 rooms up front was my best friend and his sons. I had a couple in the front room, and then I'd go down the hallway, and then I had the back room, right? And so this is before I woke up. My best friend, he goes to the bathroom, and as he's going back, he hears banging on the door, and he looks out the window and sees see the law enforcement. So he goes out because he didn't want his sons to wake up. So they're holding ARs ready to go. And so he said he opened the door, put his hands out. They pushed the door open, grabbed him, slammed him against the wall. Ooh. Right there. That window that he looked at, that's where their bed is. So his sons now are looking at their dad with guns pointed to the back of his head being cuffed.
What did they say his dad did wrong?
Well, they were just doing a raid.
What was the accusation?
They were just doing a raid, so they need to clear the house. So everyone, and when they do that, everyone gets cuffed and taken out of the house.
Okay.
So
what I'm saying is, what do you think they would have said the justification was for coming in hot like that?
J6.
Yeah, but what about J6? Are they accusing you of?
They were ultimately, I think they thought that I was connected with. So the guy that I ran into, Russ, they were indicted the day they raided my home. I was on a Telegram group with him and I don't know 100+ people. And I don't know if you've ever been on Telegram.
I don't know what that is.
Okay, so it was one of a new encrypted kind of social media text messaging thing that started coming up, and people. The one problem with Telegram is people just throwing people in different groups. So all of a sudden now you're part of like 6 or 7 different groups, SoCal, MAGA for Trump, all these different groups. And I'm like, okay, whatever. If you missed a day, you go back and there's 500 messages. I'm like, I'm not reading all these damn messages.
I have a life.
Like, seriously. That's actually what I told the guy. He was like, because he came in when they did, well, let me break it down. So they take him away, Brian, they take the other 2, and I'm in bed and I'm hearing FBI. And I'm like, it's kind of like you're coming to consciousness as you're sleeping. I'm laying there. I thought it was a dream. And then I start getting consciousness and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like, I'm like, no way. So I put my glasses on. Luckily that night I wasn't just sleeping in my underwear. I wore sweatpants.
Yeah. And
I opened the door. As soon as I opened the door, because I have a dog too, and my dog rushes out and they turn ARs, 2 got cut right in my face. FBI, hands up. I'm like, please don't shoot my dog. She's a nice dog. And then I hear him, friendly dog, friendly dog, friendly dog. They come and they grab me, cuff me up. And the lead agent, Chad Warren, grabs me and he's like, I was like, I want to see the warrant. We'll give it to you after we clear the house. I was like, I want to call my lawyer. He's like, well, it's not an arrest, so it's not like that. I was like, I want to talk to my lawyer. He goes, not like that. We'll clear everything up after we clear the house. They're taking me out, take me down that driveway I was telling you back to Charlotte walked. We have a little gated fence, and as we get outside the gate, I look over, and there's another agent standing on the gate, looking down the side of the house with his gun just waiting, as if somebody comes running out, he's going to take him out. And I'm just like looking around like, what's going on? No one has ever seen me, and I've never worn any protective gear at any of the rallies or in DC. I've always been a shirt, t-shirt, and a hat, or whatever. They came at me and at our house like I run guns or like I have drugs or women or something like that, And like, this guy's standing there as if someone comes out, he's going to take him out, like we're hiding illegals in the basement or something. It just really blew my mind to the level that this was happening. There's cars all out in my street. I look over, and the only person that I recognized, because I couldn't see anyone else, they had Bryson, the younger one. He was 3 at the time, and they were putting him. The lady was holding him, putting him in the car, and I'm like, "Dude, what's going on?" He goes, "Wait there. We cleared the house." They put me up against my wall. I'm just sitting there. They're like, "All right, we clear. We can go back in." So I go back in. Or I'm sitting. They put me back in. I'm sitting on the couch. They let my dog in, so I'm rubbing, saying what's up to Ginger. Then they let the kids in. It was like an emotional thing. Then they let the boys in next, and the boys come running in. They hug me, and they let the 2 roommates, the couple, take Ginger over to their new place. They were moving out in a few months or a few weeks anyway, and they let Brian take the kids to his ex-wife, and that's when they came in and started questioning me. And they were like, "Oh, you were on this Telegram group with Russ Taylor, and Russ did this, that, and the other." He's like, "Did you hear anything about them wanting to transfer guns over state lines?" I'm like, "What?" He's like, "It's in that Telegram group." I'm like, "Bro, have you ever missed a day on Telegram?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "You see all those messages?" I go, "I don't have time for that." I go, "I didn't see anything like that, but I don't have time to go read through all those messages. Like, I got a life. I got stuff to do." And then they're like, well, because what him and this other guy did in there was disgusting and da-da-da-da. I'm like, all right. Like, I go, look, the Russ that I know, that's not the Russ I know. That's all I can talk about. I can't talk about anything else. I can't talk about what he did or didn't do because I don't know. Mm-hmm. But the guy that I know is a nice dude. Like, I went to his birthday party. Like, that's it. I was a lot more emotional than I am now. Mm. I'm like, and this is not America. I was like, you coming into people's homes like this is not America. I didn't do anything wrong, and you're raiding my house. My family left another country to come here, and not for this not to happen. Our country was in a 20-year civil war up until George Bush ended it. So we know what it's like when it's warlords are just coming in guns ablazing, kicking in people's doors. And I'm like, this is not the country. And the one thing that got me, there was a montage on NBC where Brian Williams was doing a voiceover for Antifa. And he goes, Antifa was there on the shores of Normandy. Antifa helped to break down. This literally, people can go look this up. It's real. And I'm like, are you kidding me? NBC is trying to say Antifa was what stopped the Nazis and glorifying them. And I made that statement. I go, this country is losing itself. Like, I just saw this and I make that point about Antifa stopping Nazis and fascism. And the lead agent, Chad goes, oh yeah. I'm like, uh-oh. So I already knew this guy's not a good dude. Something else is going on here, or he's just lost. So I just really kept talking about how this is not America. This is messed up that you guys are doing this, you know. And he was like, then one of the agents came to go, all right, we got the stuff they were looking for. So I go back in, and my kitchen table was like this. And so they had my MAGA hat, my cell phone, my laptop, my flash drives, my portable drive, hard drive, sorry. And I'm just like, are you taking my hat, man? Like, I got that at the only Trump rally I ever went to, which was at the time was in August in Vegas. Me and my buddy went, and somebody gave me a MAGA hat. And mind you, I voted for him in 2016, but this is 2020. This is the first time I ever put on a MAGA hat, was that hat. I'm like, guys, really, dude? Like, you're going to take my hat? They're like, well, we saw you on CCTV with it. So I'm like,
so what?
Yeah. I'm like, all right, whatever, man.
Yeah.
So that lasted, so it was about 6 to noon. They leave. When they leave, my best friend comes back in, and he'd been live on Instagram off our Chief and Americano thing. So he comes in, and we're live, and we set it up, and I'm just going off. I'm like, this is an America. They came in, and I'm just going off about everything that happened. And I can be a very emotional person, so I had some tears going. I mean, this was a pretty wild incident. Yeah. Then after that, about 2 days after that, because it was a Thursday, that Saturday, because the LA Times had reached out to us, and we didn't answer, but they had got in touch with my buddy's ex-wife, and she made a statement, which is like, you just don't talk to media. My mom ignored him, because the same thing, my mom was like, it was so crazy, because I remember I told you about how I was on the newspapers for getting a DUI back in college, and it felt like the end of the world, all that stuff.
Yeah.
God was preparing me for this. Because when this started happening, that Saturday morning, I go, the news is talking about or reaching out to people, and I know what they're doing. They're trying to set something up to go, oh, actor, da-da-da-da. They're trying to make a statement out of it. But I did nothing wrong. I didn't do anything wrong. They're just gonna like paint it as a problem. Later that afternoon, 2 hours after I made that video that's still on my Instagram right now, LA Times goes, Netflix actor rated. Daily Mail in England, Netflix actor. Like Chicago Tribune, all these big papers are poof. And in there, in the story to go, he was rated from this day for being in January 6th. He's known for going to Trump rallies and telling people to run for local office. That's what I was known for in their own writing. Like, think about that. I'm so dangerous, and they have to make a big splash, but it wasn't about the crux of the article. It was about the headline. That's all it was about. So, that was June. All that stuff started happening. I wasn't in a sense known in the conservative world yet, so I was just kind of trying to get the message out there. Look what they're doing. Look what they're doing. That's when I was like, screw it. I'm going to run for office when we had the next year. I was like, I don't care, J6. But I got in touch with a lawyer, Larry Clayman. I connected with him, and we initially filed a lawsuit against the FBI, against those agents for violating my First and Fourth Amendment right. So that lawsuit lasted for about 3 years, kept going up the ladder. We were supposed to have oral arguments of August, bless you, August of 23, we're supposed to have oral arguments. Then something happened where they removed this one judge who was our judge, who was a Reagan appointee. They removed him from all Trump's cases in LA or in California on the Ninth Circuit, which of course was one of ours. So then the judges that got ours were 3 liberal judges. I want to say it was 2 Obama and a Clinton. And so they wrote an opinion saying, well, if you were supposed to go take your complaint to the executive branch, sorry, bye. So it got all the way to the California Supreme Court, and they're like, nope, you're supposed to take this to something else. And we're like, and it's funny that then 2 months later, right at the end of it was actually 3 months later, November 30th, coming back from it was the Lady Ballers premiere. I did the movie Lady Ballers of Daily Wire.
Were you in that?
Yeah, okay. I was. I played Deuce Johnson, okay. the announcer. And so we're coming back. My wife at this point is 7 months pregnant, and we get off. We land at Burbank Airport. Burbank's a smaller airport, so when we land, you land and you walk on the tarmac. You don't have to walk on a little, kind of apparatus to get into the terminals. So my wife and a friend of ours who was in the movie as well, we get down, and as soon as I step onto the tarmac, I look over and I saw like there were like 4 people looking at me or looking at the direction, and just something was weird, I was just kind of looking up, waiting for something. I was like, all right, well, whatever. As soon as I step, the female agent comes in front of me. She goes, Siaka Massaquoi? I'm like, yeah. She goes, can you come with us, please? And also an agent on either side of me.
Oh.
They're like, this is 3 years after the raid.
Oh my!
I didn't get arrested or charged after the raid. Went and sued them instead, which I actually think kept them away from coming and getting me initially. That's just my own personal beliefs. That went on for 3 years. And a few months after the courts denied, then they came after me in the raid, or came after me to arrest me. Now, the arrest warrant was issued on November 15th. They waited 2 weeks to come and get me on the 30th. So they could have got me anytime, but they waited till I was coming back from the premiere on purpose because they wanted to get it onto the news media. Oh. So they come and the guys grab me and they're like, you have to come with us. I'm like, for what? They're like, you're under arrest. I'm like, you tell me what I'm going to jail for or I'm not going. And my wife's now separated, so they didn't let us like say goodbye or anything. And they're like, it's for, the guy over here on this side was like shaking, right? And he's just, and I'm like, dude, I'm literally, I was wearing a Barnabas shirt that had Jesus Saves on the back. This is great. So I had Barnabas shirt, I'm wearing sweatpants, and I think actually I was wearing these shoes. and I had a little hat on, and he's shaking, and I'm like,
why is he shaking? What do you mean?
He's like holding me, but he can tell like his adrenaline's rushing. Oh. Like he wants to do something. I've been training martial arts my whole life. I can tell when someone's like hyped up, amped, and I'm just like, and he goes, and I'm like, no, you're going to tell me. And so it was 2 agents here, the female left and this other male here. And he goes, the guy goes, he goes, for January 6th. I go, I didn't do anything on January 6th. And then the guy here goes, don't talk about it. I go, he brought it up. And so I'm like, look, guys, I'm not going to do anything. There's 4 airport police. You guys all have guns, but I can be pissed. I can be upset that this is happening. I'm not crazy. I got my wife there. She's pregnant. I'm not going to do anything. Like, I'm not going to try to John Wick anybody. Like, chill out, And the guy's like, who was right there, he goes, look, man, we're just trying to make this easy. We're not trying to embarrass you. I go, it's too late. You took me off the plane. Everyone's watching. What are you talking about? He's like, all right, look, you're going to spend a night in jail. This is happening. So we're just trying to make it easy as possible. I'm like,
you're like, I'm gay. I'm gay.
Right. I was actually thinking, I was like, oh, damn it. Here we go again. But we ended up, because the LA County Jail, by God's grace, was closed for the night. So they had Monterey Park Jail, which is a smaller jail. So they're taking me in the car. I'm in the car with the female and this other agent, and I'm just railing. I'm like, man, this is bullshit. You guys knew where I was. I was like, at this point, I ran for office. I'm vice chair of LA County, the largest county in America for the LA GOP. My wife's 7 months pregnant. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
You guys could have called me. You could have called me. And I kept saying this over and over. The guy finally says, well, we didn't want you to be prepared. I was like, oh, that's what it's about. I go, and I know what this is. You're just doing this to get a headline. I didn't do anything. You're doing this so you can plaster up actor, finally arrested, this, that. And I was like, I know, because that's the same thing you guys did after you raided my house. I'm like, well, what's my charges? He goes, we'll tell you when we get to the jail. I'm like, okay. We get to the jail, and I'm sitting there, and the guy comes over, and he's like, all right. He's like, well, he goes, here's your charges. And he's like, it's all of them, misdemeanor, 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 misdemeanor. I'm like, you guys came like this for me for misdemeanors? Are you serious? He's like, yeah, I mean, it's just, I'm like, okay.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, whatever, man. Like, I just stopped kind of worldly fighting. And I was like, okay, I'm here now. This is where I'm going to be. I'm just going to try to be calm. And so I don't know how I got on it, but I'm like, well, God saved my life. Jesus helped me, sobriety and da-da-da-da. And it's like, hey, you read the Bible. And I just started kind of talking about God.
Yeah.
And I was like, are you guys believers? And the girl's like, oh, I'm not. And the guy's like, oh, I'm a Catholic. I'm like, oh, really? I was like, are you like...
Have you heard of Sam Shamoon?
I did say this. I go... I was like, have you read your... Or I say, are you like most Catholics, or have you read your Bible? Or somewhere I was like, are you like most Catholics who haven't read the Bible, or have you read it? He goes, hey, man, come on. I'm like, well, have you read your Bible? He goes, no. I'm like, well, like, what are you doing? You did it.
I love that.
Right?
You're like most Catholics? Come on, have you?
No. It was like... And so then I get changed up and everything. They put me in the cell by myself. There's really only one other person in other side who was a drunk passed out. So it was just really me and the jailer. And I'm sitting there, and the first thing I do is I'm nervous or get nervous energy, so I do some push-ups and stuff. Then I get on my knees, and I just start saying Our Fathers over and over. So much so, the jailer closed the door to the cell because she's like, all right. Then she comes in later. She goes, hey, do you want anything to read? I'm like, a Bible if you got it. And she's like, I don't know, but we'll check. She comes back. She has a Bible.
Wow.
So in there, I'm reading. I was in 2 Kings because that's where we were in discipleship class. And I fall asleep with the Bible in my arms. Next day comes, and it may have just been a moment thing for me, but like the woman was just stoic, ready to go. The guy, when I walked in, he's like, hey, he kind of was like a little more, it seemed like he was a little more ashamed of himself. And I don't know if that had anything to do with calling Christ out, and kind of talking to him that way. Anyway, they take me over to the U.S. Marshal's office to get processed. I get in there. One of the marshals, like, he looked from behind his computer. He goes, they're still doing J6 people? I was like, yeah. He goes, damn. I'm like, I know, man. I don't know. And I'm the only one in like sweatpants and have the shirt on the back has a cross that says Jesus Saved with chains around it. Now, when I get in the marshal's office, they cuff me on my wrist, my waist, and my ankles. So now I'm walking around like I am a mass murderer. Yeah, for misdemeanors. They put me in a cell by myself, and I'm just chilling. My wife, everyone gets in contact with my lawyer. So he was planning to take a red eye from Florida to be there. And I told him, when I was able to talk to him the day before, I was like, well, 1 o'clock is supposed to be my court time, right? So everyone's planning to come at 1. And they're like, all right, come on now. We're going to have you go talk to, your lawyer. And I'm like, oh, my lawyer's not going to be here. It's like 11 o'clock. So I go out, and they put me in like the little cubicle to talk to him. The screen comes on, and it's a public defender. I'm like, oh no, I have someone. I'm like, all right, if you need anyone, we're here. I talked to the court, the judge's clerk, who was telling me, I was like, look, man, we're broke, been out of work since this. Like, we don't have a bunch of money, because they were trying to see like, hey, where we're going to set your bail and all that stuff. I'm like, we're just we're staying alive right now, so we don't really have money for bail, but like, what's going on? She's like, all right, well, I'll let you know. And I was like, and I lost my jobs because I came out as conservative. So like, I haven't been able to work as an actor in LA in the same way. So we're done there. I knock on the door. The sheriff's come by. I go, yeah, I'm done. He's like, all right, we're busy. We're understaffed. So give me a second. I'm like, okay. So I'm just sitting there. All of a sudden, busting in, my lawyer's like, hey! He comes in with his travel bag, and I'm like, Larry, I'm like, hey, man, what's going on? He goes, we're all good. We got you a California lawyer. We're going to get you out today. You're going home today. Just don't worry about it. I'm like, oh, man, thank you. Touching the window. And he's like, all right, just don't worry. We'll get this done. He leaves. I get on my knees, man, and I don't know if you know the Brandon Lake song, Gratitude. No. And so the lyrics are, so I throw up my hands and I praise you again and again, because all I have is a hallelujah. And I just kept saying that over and over, on my knees, hand like as much as my hands there as I could. And so they're taking us out of there to transport us now. They're going to take us to the court for our court date, for our court session. And when they take me out, they have you face the wall. So you're not facing out, you're facing the wall. So my face is just against the wall like this. This other guy comes up. He's like 6'1", 6'2", white dude, tatted up. If somebody wanted to cast a white supremacist in a movie, like, it was this guy. Yeah. And I'm just like, oh man, I was like, I'm not trying to prove nothing to nobody. Just be chill, be chill. And so he turned and we start walking towards the elevator, right? And he goes, hey man, nice shirt. I had that Jesus Saves right there. I turned and I go, oh yeah? Well, Jesus saved my life. I was drunk and so I'll just start going through. He's like, oh yeah, I've been reading the Bible. So now we're just talking about the Bible, about God. Get in the elevator. And we're still going back and forth about it. There's 5 of us all together as the prisoners, and then 2 guards. And so me and this guy who has like an overwrite like this, who his thing was he was trying to get out, finally get out on or he was trying to get out on a good behavior, but he had stabbed a guy earlier, like the year before, so he didn't know if he was going to get a chance to get out because of this. Like, that's the kind of guy that was in there. One guy was like ran drugs, another guy ran money, one guy was just a gangster. and me. and so everyone's in their, jumpsuit. I'm in just the sweatshirt.
Jesus saves.
And yeah, Jesus saves. And then we're talking, we get in the van, and then the one guy who kind of looked like an old Cheech from Cheech and Chong with a long beard and stuff. And he's like, and he starts chiming in. We start talking about C.S. Lewis, start talking about Lord of the Rings, and we get back to the Bible. Like, that's what was going on. And then we get to a point, we get to the courthouse. We're walking in, shuffling in, and I just happened to work out. I was the last one of the 5. Everyone's going in, and I knew my wife was going to be there and my lawyer at least. I come in, and these for bail hearings is just small seats. There's only like 2 rows and maybe 8 seats across each of these 2 rows that are separated by a little middle section. So it's not a big gallery. So I walk in, I look over, I don't even see my wife because I see the pastor that married us. I see people from Godspeak Church, which is an hour away from downtown LA, at least. I can't even find her because there's so many people there to support. I'm just, I can't tell you how it just blew me away. And so I'm shuffling, and then they tell me later, you're shuffling in, you're literally in chains, and we see the cross that says Jesus saves on the back. And that blew their minds. And we get to behind the jail, or behind the courtroom, which is like a holding cell. So we're in there, and we're talking, and we're just kind of going back and forth. And before we go out there, that big tall dude, he kind of bumps me. He goes, "Hey man, can you pray for us?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah." Okay. you want me? And he's like, yeah. Like, okay. So I do a prayer. I finish it with, regardless on if we're released today or we're held, we know that as long as Jesus got us, we're going to be okay. Amen. And everyone's, okay. And then they start going one by one. Each come back. She's a bitch. She's unreasonable. I'm like, oh, damn it. I'm going to have to stay in. And it was a holiday weekend, so I would have to stay in from Friday to Tuesday. So it was my turn, and everyone in there is like, hey, man, we hope you get out. Everyone's like hyped up, trying to give me, I'm like, all right, good luck. So I shuffle in, I push the door open. As I open the door, everyone there stands up. My Pastor Jesse's buttoning up, like, let's go. And I'm just like, it's just, the support was just, I can't quantify it, you know what I mean? But it was just so much. And I'm walking up, and my wife's in her all black dress, stomach sticking out. She's holding her Bible. She's wearing a cross on her neck that her godmother gave her that she's never taken off. And she's coming around the corner and I'm walking up to her. I give her a little kiss, and the guy was like, hey, you can't kiss. I'm like, all right, man, this is my wife. He's like, I'm gonna have you like leave.
You said you were gay.
Yeah. With record shows us,
stop
right?
doing that. I'm sorry.
No, that's great. I got away with it. And so I get there, and I stand next to my lawyer, and I can feel the people still standing behind me. Matt, it felt like they had their hands on my back, like, we got you.
Yeah.
And so we go through the process. The magistrate's like looking at the paperwork, and she's like, they want this type of release for misdemeanors? What's like? She's confused.
Okay.
The DA's like, I don't know. And then the representative from the government was like, yeah, this is the rule. This is what we're gonna do. They actually tried to take away my Second Amendment right, and I'm like, dude, I'm nonviolent. Like, there's no reason to. We live in LA. Like, LA is a crazy violent town. You're not going to take away my guns. My lawyer, lobbied for that. The DA didn't push back. They were all confused, really, more than anything else. Judge's like, okay, we'll grant you that. We'll actually even drop your bail to $500. So if I didn't show back up to anything else, I would then owe $500 on top of whatever else happened. So they dropped it from $1,000 to $500, and they're like, okay, you're going to be released. I'm like, great. And I didn't know this part. So this is how God was still working. I leave, I get to the back, and I'm like, they're letting me go. And the guys are like, oh, they're like happy for me. One of the guys who was quiet the entire time, the Hispanic muscle dude, he was just sitting there quiet the entire time. And before we separated, he goes, hey, congratulations on your baby. I was like, oh, thanks, man. It was just like he was listening, he was hearing it, And at this point, I leave, but I didn't know I was supposed to sign the paperwork to say I'm leaving. And the DA was supposed to sign too. If you don't get those 2 signatures, I don't get out. So I leave, and they're like, court was closing in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And so they're like, no, he has to get out tonight. My friends were like, he has to go out. So there's one lady who works security at Godspeak Church where we go, who named her little car after me, called the side of Siaka, a little sports car. They're like, we need to get the DA. She goes, I'll find him. Takes off out of the courtroom to go run around the courthouse to find this guy. Finds him in a parking lot, getting in his car to leave for the night. She goes, we need you. Grabs him, brings him back in. He signs the paperwork. The clerk lets my lawyer sign on my behalf. At this point, I'm sitting underneath the jail in the van, like waiting, like, all right, like, you said I can go. Let's go. What's going on, right? And the guy finally comes back with paperwork, and he's like, all right, guys, let's go. Sorry for the wait. And they don't say anything about why the wait was happening. So I had no idea this was going on. Okay. Right? We get back for them to process me out. And as they're doing that, the guy who yelled at my wife, he goes, hey, man, I'm sorry for yelling at your wife. Just this protocol. I was like, oh, no, I get it. Thank you for saying that. I get out. They're like, all right, bye. And so I could take the elevator down to the lobby, and I
had a beer.
Yeah, no, I was like, let's drink. No, my wife was right there. My lawyer's there. I gave my lawyer a good hug, and I gave my wife a hug and a kiss. And we walk outside, and we ended up seeing the people who were there to support me. They all come around from different angles. One car pulls up, people walk this way. They all come and surround me, give me a big, big hug, and it was just like it was all God. And it has the story of when the prison doors swung open. And I'm like, it happened. I lived that. I lived what was talked about in the scripture. Like, what? It wasn't this thing of just a magical, it just happened, but it can be described as that, because all I did after that moment where I was like, all right, I'm just going to be here, I just worshiped the Lord. That's it. I didn't say like, hey, guard, this isn't right and fair. No, it was just like reading the Bible, fell asleep, praying when I was in every cell that I walked in, pray, sang the song to worship to him, talked about Jesus as much as I could to these guys, and the gates swung open. And it wasn't supposed to. Like, even God was working through other people to bring the closure to that moment. My friends had put together a Gifts and Go, defendsiaka.com if you still want to help. And to put that together within the first 24 hours, we had hit like $60,000. Jeremy Boring wrote something on X, was like, he's a good dude. We back him all the way. Gina Carano came out and was like one of the nicest guys. Like the amount of support compared to the raid, where like I wasn't kind of in the circle yet, and not that many people knew me, so I was kind of waving from the sticks, be like, hey, this is crazy, right? Somebody should say something. To then over here, this is what I saw, that we can take the narrative back. Those guys jumped on real quick. You had Post Millennial wrote something about it right away. Daily Wire wrote something about it right away. Epoch Times, everyone wrote about it in a positive way. And I ended up talking to the Jennifer Van Leer, who is the editor-in-chief of Red State, and I told her the story, and I told her everything in there. And I didn't talk to any the left media, but Newsweek did an article about it. And they had to pull from our sources, which included me saying that no matter what, I know as long as we got God, we're going to be okay. So they had to put that in there because I didn't talk to them, so they had to pull from something else.
You had to evangelize Newsweek readers.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sitting there going, well, that's cool. And we've been in the process so far, and we're able to raise somewhere around like 180, and that, because we're fighting the whole way, I said not guilty on all of it, so we're going all the way. So that's costing. We got the initial court date for my trial was supposed to be October 15th, but it got moved out to January 21st, the day after inauguration, right? Which is Trump saying that he's going to pardon day one. So it's like, what are we doing? But with that going out, it kind of, like, I think God's going to take care of it. But the meter of the lawyer is still going, let's just say. So then it's 2 extra months than we're able to raise. But I think he's going to take care of that.
Wow. So this meant a lot to you that Trump won. I mean,
I was going to jail. I was going to federal prison if he didn't. That was just what it was. That's not even a question. Wow. And God knows. I mean, they were putting grandmothers and people with cancer into federal prison for months to 6 months to a year because they were just there. I know a woman who had house arrest for the entire 9 months of her pregnancy for standing on the grass. A buddy of mine, a former U.S. agent, was there just to was on the grass, but with his gun. They're like, all right, we can get you for 22 years. He's still fighting now. These people are sick. And they were trying to, and I mean, I'm telling you this, as far as I'm sitting here and this table is real, I was going to be in federal prison if Trump did not win that election. That's just what it was.
Wow.
So when he won,
was a little bit more nail biting for you.
Oh man, it was. Well, yes and no. It wasn't nail biting in a way. It was more like, I'm not going to jail.
Oh, wow.
You know, it was that relief because
were you at the Daily Wire offices?
Yeah, I was there.
What was that like?
That was awesome.
That energy must have been amazing.
So I was there, and I was I actually got to do Tim Pool's show because Tim was recording there at the same time. So I did a show for about a half hour. I'm sitting next to this one lady, and she had her ex-husband who was like at Mar-a-Lago with Trump and the guys. And you heard the story about Elon with his app knowing that Trump won.
No.
So Elon had this app that he developed that saw where the numbers were, and he knew Trump won like 9:30. So at 9:45, she's telling us, and she's like, "Oh yeah, they said it's over." I'm like, "What?" And she shows me the text, and I'm sitting there reading it while we're on the show, and I'm just like, so I knew at 9:30 that he already won. So I'm just kind of like, all right, let me wait till it's said out there. But it was said like it was done, and she showed me a picture of him sitting with Elon. Their friend took where they're just like celebrating and stuff. I'm like, wow. I'm like, huh. And I remember giving Jeremy a hug afterwards, and I give him a hug, and I looked at him, I go, I'm not going to prison. And so he laughs, and I mean, you know, say what anyone can say what they want about Daily Wire, but you know, they didn't have to take a shot on me and sign me to a contract that changed my life and my wife's and my child's life to be able to afford a home. And coming off of, I think from 2020 to 2023, before this contract, that probably all 3 years combined, maybe around $50,000, $35,000 to $50,000, maybe, you know, and that's like scratching and clawing. And for them to do that when they didn't have to.
Well, not just that, but for Jeremy to stand up for you publicly.
Publicly, so people can say what they want. I know they say what they want about the Candace thing. There's other rumors happening now, but I'm like, look, I watched them take a shot on someone in an industry that doesn't take shots on people from the entertainment world. They go, no, good luck. We'll wait till the smoke's clear. And I remember talking to Dallas Sonier, one of their producers, that's who I connected with first from Daily Wire. It was the day after I was arrested. I'm talking to him. I'm like, hey man, I just want to thank you for all this and that. And I told him the story, and he goes, no, don't worry about it. He goes, we're your friends. He goes, we couldn't call each other friends if we didn't come and support you. And I'm coming from Hollywood, where I just lost my manager for 6 years because of what I believed in. My agent didn't even have the courtesy to write me an email. The friends that I had in Hollywood all disappeared. And these people that I, to a certain extent, just met, that we vibed on the same direction for this country and the same faith, were like, we got you. And I'm like, you're literally people I've known for decades disappeared. And to see them stand up, you know, it's they have a loyalty to me, unless they do something personal in me or my family. They have a loyalty to me that no outside force can break. You know, because they didn't have to do any of that stuff, bro. They could have been like, good luck, you know, hey, what's that? They were like, no, keep going. Like we got you, keep going. I'm like, wow. He's like, Dallas said, he goes, we're not ashamed of you being in our movie. You can go and talk about it. Keep pushing. I was like, all right, well. So watch Lady Ballers on Daily Wire Plus. You know, so it's now we're at a place where we tried to get the trial moved back further just because of what Trump's promise is. They said, the court says no, we can't do it based on until it's an official act. So we're like, look, now you're just wasting time and people's money. It's like, now I got to go to DC, be there trying to get a flight and a place to stay the week of inauguration. That's probably going to be crazy. So, you know, we'll work that out. And I know God's going to take care of that. But it's just, I think I talked to one guy who got convicted recently, former Marine, and he goes, God's blessed you, brother. He goes, God is going to have you in there in DC during the inauguration. Think about that. And I thought of it more like, man, I got to find money to do all this extra stuff. He's like, no, God's put you in that place to celebrate a historical moment. And I'm like, well, it's a great way to look at it, you know? So that's the way we're looking at it now, waiting to see. And again, everything's up to the Lord. Everything's up to the Lord.
Thank you so much for sharing so much. It was beautiful. And
sorry, I told you I could talk, man. I'm sorry.
No, don't be. It was amazing. Where can people support you? Where can they follow you? Where can they find you?
Yeah.
What movie are you working on right now? I presume it's got to be one.
You gotta. I don't want to talk about it because I don't want it to be lost. Somebody else to take it. But I'm working on a story that is out of the town that I'm living in Tennessee, a beautiful story. Yeah. And I'm going to work on it with a couple of producers at DW, and hopefully we can bring that to life because I think it's a perfect story for right now. Yeah. I'll wait to talk about that. But if you want, you can find me on X at Siaka _Massaquoi. That's Siaka, SIAK _MASSAQUOI.
We'll put these links in the description, Josiah. Is that all right?
Oh, thank you, brother. You can also find me on Instagram, but Instagram is kind of a, they censor like crazy. But if you want, you can find me at _Siaka Massaquoi. And check out our Hollywood for Freedom new podcast called The New Hollywood Show. You can find that on YouTube and X. And we're just kind of interviewing different people to why our side needs to entertain and tell stories, just like Jesus did. Like we should be telling our stories. And if you want to help donate to my defense fund, you can go to Defend SiakaDefend.com. And if you can't give money, they have an option there with Gifts and Go where you can give prayers. And I've seen prayer work. So that goes even further than money. So, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be on the show that my wife and I loved from afar, being like, wow, that's pretty cool. And now we're sitting here like this. And thank you guys for taking the time to listen.
We're going to finish one of those friggin' fantastic handshakes.
There you go.
A good hand.
Yeah.
God bless you, brother.
You should wait till you get one of my hugs. They're pretty good too.
We'll do one of that too, but not in a gay way, just a normal.
No, not in the trying to not be in trouble at the courthouse way, right? In jail. Yeah, I'm gay. What? No.
Well,
thank you, brother. I appreciate it. This has been great.